Hey everyone, I believe we are now live. If you could confirm that for me, that would be fantastic. Uh, but yeah, I'm pretty sure we are. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be. So hey, what's up, everybody? It's a live show time. It's Q&A, live Q&A. I'm sure you guys, a lot of you are not new to this. There's not really any show component per se. You guys just basically ask questions, and I will do my best to answer them. There is a voluntary paid system, if you want to call it that. Basically, if you want to do donations, you can do them through Super Chat or PayPal, or we even have Bitcoin Wallet, which somebody asked me to do, I think, as a joke. But then one person did it, but it was like a fragment because you can't do a whole Bitcoin because that's insane. So it was like 93 cents, something like that. But anyway, no, the point is if you do want to do that, you can do that, and I'll give questions priority. But really, it's not a requirement. It's just a way to support the channel. I'll still obviously answer questions that are just non-paid. I just give them priority because they paid for it, right? But anyway, so let's just get started here. Everybody says you can see me. Things seem to be going okay. Hi, everybody. How are you? So far, so good. Nobody's saying that there's no audio or anything. So, yes. All right. Then, great. Let's just get on with it. Do you think it would be a good idea if they rebooted Power Stone 1 or 2 or both? I would love to see a Power Stone collection, another one. People forget they did do a Power Stone collection for the PSP. But probably because it was on the PSP, it didn't get a wide enough reception, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I'd love to see those games get like a full-on HD re-release type of thing. Plus, I'd really love to see a third one. I always thought the third game really should have existed, and I always felt like on the GameCube it would have felt perfect. Obviously, that's very dated, but yeah, why not? Let's get some Power Stone 3. I think the reason you don't have demand for something like Power Stone 3 is because there was no story or anything really drawing you into it. It was just a couple of fun games from the Dreamcast. That's my guess. Whereas something like obviously like Shenmue, which people are already bringing up, that had more to draw you in. But don't. I'm not. I'm just saying that I think that Power Stone. That's probably why Power Stone never saw that. But I would love to see a re-release of it. I don't think there's anything really stopping that, except for Capcom probably believing they can't make money off of it, which is generally the reason. Am I going to see Deadpool 2? I already did. I saw it this morning. $5 matinee show. That was a really cool movie. I won't talk about it beyond that because I'm sure a lot of people haven't seen it yet and they don't want spoilers. But I'll say go see it. If you like the first Deadpool, there's no reason why you wouldn't like this one. Um, have I seen a Dreamcast fighting stick? Let's see. All right. So obviously the Dreamcast was a Chinese, or specifically Hong Kong, knockoff version of the Dreamcast using Dreamcast parts, and then they gave it a monitor and all this stuff. But there was a whole line of random Dreamcast peripherals with the name Dreamcast on it. I was unaware that there was a fighting stick specifically, unless you're talking about the standard controller, which is actually like a Sega Saturn modeled controller. Um, did I see the royal wedding? No, I really couldn't care about that. I'm an American. That's one of our founding principles is we're not really supposed to care about royalty. It's kind of weird. Um, Advice about hard off in Japan. Go to as many as you can. Bring a lot of bags. And plot routes that are logical to get back to your hotel or wherever you're staying. And be prepared to spend money. Uh, how was the Dolby Atmos? It was pretty good. I take it you follow me on Instagram. No, the sound of the movie was fantastic. Shenmue 3 news. So I actually have no insights into Shenmue 3 because Sega doesn't really have anything to do with that one. But Shenmue 3 obviously was delayed. And a lot of people are upset about that, but I'm in the camp of like, yeah, if they need more time, let them have it. I have no desire to have the game come out just for the sake of an arbitrary release date and then have it be broken. It's like, dude, if they need more time, give it to them. I'd rather the game was like finished and functional and where they want it to be, as opposed to it hit an arbitrary street date, so you got it. It's just shitty and broken. Like, I don't want that. Why would you? That's the kind of crap everybody hated Assassin's Creed Unity and stuff for. Like, don't let it be broken just to hit a target date. Get it out when it's ready to come out. That's one of the great things about their situation is the game is fundamentally independent, so they're not beholden to a specific release date, which is great because you will probably end up with a much better game as a result of that. Um, how was that financially viable, the Dreamcast? It wasn't. It was just something that some clone company did. They were basically just nabbing old Dreamcasts and just kind of popping them in shells. Ultimately, that's one of the few times where Sega actually sent like a legit cease and desist and forced that's the stopping of production or something like that. So there was no, that didn't last very long, which is part of the reason they're so rare. Will I come to Germany again? Gamescom, greetings from Germany. Yana? Well, I would love to come to Germany again. I would love to go to Gamescom again. It's a possibility that I will be going to Gamescom this year. I won't rule it out. I got one tentative, like, hey, maybe. So we'll see. But if I do go, you guys will know. We just got a super chat from Lee SJBMCPRS who says, question coming. Well, I look forward to it. It looks like he said it immediately after. Evening, Adam. Back in 2011, you listed your favorite 5 consoles. Has your opinion on the top 5 changed since then? If you were to name your top 5 most hated consoles, what would they be? First of all, thank you for the super chat. Second of all, I think that basically that list is unchanged. If I recall, what I said was Dreamcast, Genesis, but I included the 32X CD combo, SNES. Then it was either OG Xbox and then Xbox 360, although I don't remember which order I put it in. But that would be my current order, is OG Xbox would be number 4 and then 360 would be number 5. That's a tough call, though, obviously. Because after that, I don't have a very fixed order. I would think somewhere, something in there would be like, I really love the Wii U, although I have to admit that the Switch is burying a lot of its legacy, meaning a lot of its best content. That's where it's going. Obviously, things like the GameCube were great. PS1 was great. N64 was pretty solid, but that would be basically the top 10 there, if you will. As for the top, like the worst consoles, that depends on how you define it, because if you include things that failed miserably and were never around, or if you include like clone consoles, or if you only include like major consoles, it depends on how you define that. Infamously, my least favorite console of the major ones is the Nintendo Wii. But if you're gonna say, oh, what's worse than Nintendo Wii or like this Famiclone piece of junk, whatever, it's gonna be the Famiclone piece of junk. But that's actually more difficult than you would think to answer, only because I like to really dig into that and think about it. And I even made a video talking about this, like what exactly defines a game console as good. And the case I made was essentially that obviously most of us look at it and say, oh, it's the games that define it. It's like, but really, is it? I think there's more to it than that. Because if you take a look at something like the Neo Geo X, it has amazing games on it. And the Famiclones have amazing games on them, yet they still suck balls. And the reason they suck balls is because their hardware is terrible and they're unreliable and they have other issues. So it's not just the games. And then if you look at hardware alone, that doesn't work, because you take something like the Apple Pippin, that console is built really well. It's a very solid machine. It just has no game software, so nobody puts it in their top 10 list or anything like that. So I always thought it was kind of a hard question to answer. I just like thinking about stuff more than just like, oh, the top 5 best game consoles of all time, according to some guy. Like, fuck that. I'd be more investigatory. That's how I think about it anyway. Thank you for the super chat. What do you think we can expect from Nintendo this upcoming E3? If I recall correctly, they're not going to do any sort of standard conference. I don't remember. I actually already talked about this on my podcast for Patreon backers, which will come out next week on the channel, the main channel. I think I said something about this. It's weird to like try to recall my own predictions, but what I think I said something about how I expected more Wii U content to be announced, and more. I was hoping for some surprise announcements, but I don't know if I can. And like more updates and stuff to some of their content, specifically Metroid Prime 4. I'd love to see some sort of update to that. But I don't know if Nintendo is going to do anything that really shocks us. I think you're going to see a lot of Smash Brothers content at E3 from them, but I don't think there's going to be a whole ton of material there. Obviously, I could be wrong. That's the whole nature of it. I will tell you, I'm going to be doing videos when I'm there. I'm going to be at E3. So after I watch the conferences, I'm going to do my best to make quick response videos for you guys. So hopefully tune in to check those out. We got a donation on PayPal, which incidentally, again, paying, donating, whatever, all voluntary. You don't have to do it. If you do it, though, my preferred method is PayPal, and the information's in the description. But Super Chat, obviously very welcome. But it's voluntary. Like I said, it's just, if you donate, I'm going to answer your question first. That's just how it goes. We got a donation from Kyle Davis. He says, popping in for a minute with a tree fitty, but I got to immediately leave since I got 2 hours of work. If you're still looking for live when I get home, I'll watch. If not, I'll catch it later. Stay awesome, my dude. Well, what he's saying is if I'm still live when he gets back, he'll tune in. Well, thank you very much, Kyle, but he had no question, so just thank you very much, Kyle Davis. Okay. Back on target here. 3DO to make a big comeback? I can't imagine that would be the case. People were asking about Gamers Club Unlocked. Yeah, that's a tragedy. So if you guys aren't aware, Best Buy in the United States, which is a big box store chain, sells electronics and all that stuff. For years, I've been recommending them as the best place to get video games because they have this program called Gamers Club Unlocked. It's a subscription service. You pay $30 and you get it for 2 years. And what it does is you get 20% off the retail price of any game. Now, when you buy a $60 game, 20% off means you're only paying $47. So you just do that 3 times. You've already paid for it, and then it's still good for another 2 years. You know what I mean? So the savings can really add up. And that's where I was always getting games. And on top of that, you were getting like points for games that you could use to redeem for gift cards. So really, you could save a crap ton of money at Best Buy. However, they've announced they're discontinuing the service, which makes me very sad. So all pre-existing contracts will be honored until their time is over. And I think I have like a year of it left, and then I'm done, which makes me sad, but it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, I don't know why they're shutting it down. Obviously, they believe they're losing money from it, which is too bad because maybe it just got too successful. Because maybe if I'm Best Buy, objectively, my business model with that in mind is banking on the assumption that the average person who subscribes for it won't get more than $30 in savings for 2 years. Like, assuming, let's say they're at the register and they're like, hey man, if you sign up for this system, or this service, you can basically get 20% off your purchase right now. And you think, oh, that's a really good idea, I'm going to totally do that. Them hoping you really never come back and use it. But then there's people like me who use it constantly. I'm guessing that enough people started using it, it got too popular where they were losing way too much money. So that's why they're dropping it, which is too bad because now I don't really and once it's over, I really have no reason to shop there anymore. Because at that point, then Best Buy is not my best bet. Amazon is, because Amazon still has that program. Granted, theirs is not as good, though I'm betting they'll drop it once Best Buy does, which really sucks. But yeah, then there becomes no reason to shop at Best Buy. Lay sad. We got a donation from my boy Rob Janos. He says, hey brother, long time no see. Hope your recent travels have been fruitful. What were some games that you remember being blown away with by their graphics or gameplay? Thanks. Rob's an awesome dude. He's in New York. Hung out with him there. And we hung out in New Jersey at AVGC. Yes, if you guys don't know, I bounced around a lot recently. I haven't been around much for the last 3 weeks. I was in Osaka, Japan. I was in Guam, briefly up in Saipan and the Northern Mariana Islands, and then over to Hawaii, and now I'm back home in Chicago. So that all went well. That was good. You guys will see some of the fruits of that later in different videos. But as for the games, I'm trying to remember. You know what? The last time I remember ever looking at a game and just being blown away. It'll seem like a very dated reference now, obviously. But the last time I ever experienced that was when the 360 came out. I had an OG Xbox, and I thought, this can't be topped. Obviously, that's silly, but that's what I thought. I was like, you can't top the OG Xbox. Like, really, what are they going to do? I don't know why I thought that. It's just how you think. And then I got the 360, and I remember putting in the game Condemned, which was a launch title, and I was playing that, and I just was like, wow. That blew me away. I was like, that's another level, man. Like, holy shit. I just didn't see it coming. And so that was the last time I ever experienced that. This generation, maybe it's just because we've gotten too used to those type of updates, or just because it wasn't enough of a big leap. or I don't know, maybe I'm just too engrossed in it now, but yeah, I don't feel that anymore. So that's, I know that wasn't exactly your question, but yeah, that's the last time I can remember that happening, at least. Thanks, Rob. Uh, when am I doing my SG-1000 review? The recap video. When I have time. As I just mentioned, I was gone 3 weeks already in just the last 3 weeks. And then my schedule upcoming, I cannot privy to say exactly what it is. But suffice it to say, I'm not going to be around much. And that's the problem right now, is where I am with all this, frankly, all the YouTube work, is that I keep getting brought and sent to various things, which unfortunately eats up a lot of my time. I do my best to, obviously, I want to give you guys content. That's always the plan. But stuff like that is just harder, and certain videos float to the top because they're more necessary. While I want to do that one, and I have every intention of doing it, it's just a matter of time. Although delaying on it actually was helpful, because I can't even say why yet. Stay tuned to a pickups video. Actually, Patreon backers already know this because they already got the video, but publicly it hasn't come out yet. But there's a good reason for the SG-1000 in that case. Blade Blur, Daniel, what's up? How are you doing? Good to see you. I have so here's the thing, Blade Blur. I'm assuming you're going to too many games this year, as I'm betting a lot of you are. I regret to inform you that the probability of me going to too many games this year is basically non-existent. I won't go into the details, but yeah, I probably won't be there. On the flip side of that, I was confirmed today, publicly announced, although I already knew, I will be at the Missouri Game Con 100% in St. Louis. If you're out that way, you can definitely see me there. I will be at the Portland Retro Game Expo. And there's a few others that I'm I know I'm going to AVGC in New Jersey, so that's not too far from Philly. You can go there if you want to in September. But there's another one that I'm not sure I can talk about publicly yet, so I won't. But that's the convention scene at the moment. We got a donation on PayPal from Marvin Schulz. It says, "Hi Adam, Star Wars question. I read that they originally wanted the then 14-year-old Jodie Foster to play Leia. How would the original trilogy and or prequels/sequels change given the age difference, not being twins with Luke, romance with Han?" Okay, so I've never heard that. That's, I mean, you know, I have no idea. But I would assume that wouldn't really change much of anything plot wise. I mean, George still wrote Star Wars. I mean, I think A New Hope would be the most untainted in that sense, because Jodie Foster would essentially just play the same version of Leia. Now, what she would have brought creatively to the table is another matter. I don't know. We don't have that version of history. But yeah, I don't know how that would have affected the sequels. I know Carrie Fisher had a lot of involvement in especially the Disney era stuff that she was in. She had, well, okay, let's rephrase. She was supposed to, because the next one was supposed to be largely about her. And obviously her death really screwed up the possible reshoots that might have been needed for Last Jedi. But obviously she brought a lot creatively to the table in the original trilogy, though yeah, it's hard to say, man. I don't know what Jodie Foster would have done. I think actually the biggest impact of that would have been if she had been in Star Wars instead of, what year did Taxi Driver come out? Does anybody remember? I think, was that 1976? Because that might hurt my case. I'm gonna check something really quick here. Oh yeah, so okay, Taxi Driver came out in 1976, which she was in. So no, never mind. I was gonna say that would have had a very different effect on history, because if she had been in Star Wars instead of Taxi Driver, then what's the guy who shot Reagan? Winkler, whatever the fuck his name was. I forget. Hinkley, whatever his name was. The guy who shot Reagan probably wouldn't have done that, and history would have played out very differently. But yeah, so no, I don't think that. Yeah, I don't have any real way to say like how different it would have been. I don't think plot wise it would have changed much. I don't think that. I'm sure they still would have been twins. I'm sure the age difference would have been a non-factor. I mean, like, the actors would have been different, but the characters would have been portraying the same age, probably. And I doubt the romance with Han would have changed much. The behind-the-scenes version of the romance might have changed, because in reality, Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher were hooking up. And in fact, I think Carrie Fisher said that when they were filming, at least Empire, she was like hopelessly in love with the guy, and she had to constantly pretend like she wasn't, and it was causing some behind-the-scenes issues. Who knows? Maybe Jodie Foster is, at least now, openly a lesbian, so that probably wouldn't have been a dynamic. But I don't know where she obviously stood when she was 14, and I don't think Harrison Ford would have hooked up with her when he was 14 because he'd be in jail. But yeah, yeah, maybe that would have had a serious effect on things. I don't know. The chemistry probably would have been different. But that's just one of those, poof, we just have to kind of think about it, and I don't know. I guess I'm kind of glad we didn't get that version of history. Henry Winkler, I don't think it was him. The Fonz didn't shoot Ronald Reagan. We got a donation from Christopher Broom, who says, "Hey Adam, huge fan of your channel. You started me on my path to a complete US/North American OG Xbox set, currently at 540-ish. Congratulations." Can everybody congratulate him on that? 540 original Xbox games is a feat. That's pretty awesome. And more recently, convinced me to pick up a Wii U. Any recommendations on weird or fun Wii U games that I should pay attention to? So a lot of the Wii U's best stuff is, frankly, the Nintendo stuff. Which, unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier in this video, a lot of what made the Wii U great is kind of getting picked clean by the Switch. I'm kind of staring over at my Wii U library, and obviously you're North America, so you're not going to have like Fatal Frame 5. I'm trying to think what other random games on the Wii U I really enjoyed that were third party, but to be honest, there weren't a whole lot. Like there's that at least haven't been brought to the Switch, like Bayonetta obviously, but then that's got a Switch release. It makes me really sad, to be honest with you, that I can't come up with an obvious answer. Maybe Sonic Racing Transformed, but then again, that was on 360, but though you don't mention having a 360. Yeah, it is actually kind of a depressing fact about the Wii U is most of its best stuff is available on other platforms. Yeah, I can't come up with a great answer for you off the top of my head. Do you guys have one? Because I can't read all the titles from here, so it's hard for me to think of them all, but Hello Kitty Racer, obviously. Hello Kitty Cruisers is actually on the Switch now. So even that one doesn't hold up. Wonderful 101. That is a good example. Thank you, Darth Sonic. Wonderful 101. That's a good choice. Because that probably won't make it. Is there any others? There's got to be. Scribblenauts games are pretty good. I don't think they're exclusive to the Wii U, but at least console-wise they are. Those are pretty solid. I would get those. Those Scribblenauts games are fun. Yeah, man, I look at some of these like that at least one time were or were supposed to be exclusives, like Rayman Legends. Now that's on everything, even the Switch. Maybe, well, no, that's Nintendo. You see the problem? Even stuff like Sonic Lost World, which was like an okay Sonic game, is no longer exclusive to the Wii U. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that many other answers for you. Like, there's a lot of great games, but no going in that most of them are available on other platforms. So if I were you, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, hashtag FE. Yeah, that's a good answer, especially if you like RPGs. Thank you very much, Christopher. Again, congratulations on the Xbox progress. That's a feat. That's a real feat. I'm not even that far. I mean, I've got all the Asian stuff. There's only 50 Asian exclusives, and then I've got almost all of the PAL exclusives. I was working on those first because I figured since I live in North America, that's where I'll be able to more easily just pick up things in bulk. But unfortunately, I haven't been as successful, mostly because I've been busy or doing other things. But yeah, I'm gonna eventually get back to crushing it on the Xbox. At least that's my plan. Hashtag FE. Caleb's mocking me. Anyway, I got coffee and I got water. How are you guys doing? Did you guys have a good weekend? What have you guys been doing? Why don't you tell me some stuff? It's Sunday, so you guys, a lot of you, at least in Europe, I appreciate the Europeans who are still up for this. Derek says that Tokyo Mirage is on clearance at Best Buy, so pick it up while you can. If you have Gamers Club unlocked and it's still valid, you get 20% off that clearance too. Star Fox Zero was a disappointment because the motion controls in the 64 remake kind of. I can't help but wonder if eventually the Switch is gonna poach that one too, but then fix those issues. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Hey, Mike, Vampire Mike, Sega CD Universe, who happens to be an admin here, by the way. Uh, do you sometimes sleep on top of the mattress made of Sega CD foam inserts? I don't have enough of them, but that's a good idea. We should do that. I should totally get a bed made of those. You can pay for it if you want. Bayonetta 2 is, of course, a solid one, but that's also available on the Switch. I want to get into Dreamcast collecting. What game should I buy first? Well, the obvious historical example has always been Shenmue 1 and 2. Obviously, those are now returning. But that said, if you're doing it specifically for collecting purposes, that's definitely where you would want to start. Although I'll bet you that the value of those two games goes down as soon as the re-release is out. And no, I can't tell you guys the release date. Sorry. But the Dreamcast, I mean, dude, the Dreamcast for me is a weird one when people ask about what they should collect for it, because I'm in a weird position where it's like I did that and I obviously care about it a lot and I still get all the newer content, but all my information about what prices are and what that was like is well over a decade old. Like I finished doing all that in like 2007, 2008. So when people are like, yeah, man, I want to pick up, such and such game, but, look how expensive it is. And I look at it, I'm like, fuck, it wasn't anything like that when I was doing this. So it's a tough call. So the best point I can give you is just find some of the more exciting games first. The other problem with Dreamcast is you can't just walk into stores and buy it anymore. It's never cheap at all. It's too hot right now. And as Stefan Phobius, good to see you, by the way, says, don't start with Dreamcast, I would say. That's unfortunately a good point. I mean, Dreamcast is fantastic, but it is at this point very much a collector's console to the point where the prices on it reflect that. That you can't just go into stores and just find like cheap piles of them. You want to do cheap game hunting right now, OG Xbox. And even that is definitely starting to take a hit because of obviously backwards compatibility. Like every time one of those titles gets added, they skyrocket. I still hate myself for selling all those Dreamcast games when they were really cheap. Yeah, that is I mean, I get why people do that, and at the same time I never understand that. So essentially you're talking about the phenomenon, if you want to call it that, of when people basically sell a lot of their stuff to like GameStop or whatever. I'm not making an assumption about you. I'm just talking about in general. Maybe this is why you did it, maybe why I wasn't. But a lot of people, what they historically will do is, let's just say, the Xbox One's coming out, so I'm going to go sell all my Xbox 360 stuff so that I can afford an Xbox One. On the surface, I get why you do that. It's obvious because it's like, I want the new one, I have the old one, don't really want the old one anymore, use the money to get this, right? But as just basic economics would tell you, that's a horrible deal. You're basically buying something at the height of the pinnacle of its value, and you're unloading something at the lowest point of its value to get the other thing. In other words, that's a really bad deal for you because this thing is worth the least amount at this point in time, and this is worth the most at this amount of time. And then later, that's when you realize, like, oh, all that shit ended up being worth way more in the long run than this thing. Why did I do that? That's usually the common response, and that's why you get all those GameStop memes and all that stuff. And it's like, hey man, I don't like GameStop. I think they suck like every possible way, but I get why they do that because people do that. People sell them those things, and it's like, we're gonna take advantage of that. I get why they do it from an economic standpoint. Hey Adam, how did you like talking with Pat Contry? Yeah, Pat's a good dude. We've hung out at a few conventions. I've been on his podcast. Yeah, he's a really nice guy. He and I message each other through like Twitter every once in a while, and privately, just chat a little bit here and there. He's a good guy. That's about all I have to say. He's just a fun dude to hang out with. Did I ever play Typing of the Dead for the Dreamcast on games? Oh, no, we have not played that on Game Society. It's really hard to get those guys to do older content, to be honest with you. But I can't even blame them really, because there's no like, if we were to sit down and say, all right guys, I want you to sit down and play Typing of the Dead as a live stream, and I actually convinced them to do it, the amount of people who would actually tune in and watch that is unfortunately very limited. At least for Game Society's audience. This, you guys might actually do it because largely this is a retro based audience, but Game Society's audience just isn't that. Um, Talking about way too expensive games, I still check on Mega Man XL or X3 PAL Saturn from time to time. We should have bought it when you first got your PAL set. Ah, yes, Stefan is right. So if you guys don't know, you guys who've been watching me for a while, Stefan right there, Phobius, you guys might know him. There was a few videos I did a couple of years ago where I was like hardcore going after the Sega Saturn. And he helped me track down most of the PAL exclusives for the Sega Saturn. There's 32 Sega Saturn releases that North America never got. I have 31 of them, and he helped me get, the vast majority of those. And so there's videos actually where I unbox them, and he also sent me a ton of candy. So there's these weird videos where I'm like opening candy and opening Saturn games at the same time. That's him right there. You can get his digital autograph right there. Just finished the Cobra Kai series yesterday. Have you had a chance to see it? No. I only was even made aware of it after a whole bunch of like memes and stuff were coming up. I'm like, why is Karate Kid popular all of a sudden? And then I found out, oh, they have a show. Okay. I really didn't know. Like, I was so out of the loop on that. Joseph, I already answered your question about the SG-1000 review, bud. Warriors or Rockets today? I want to see a Rockets Celtics finals. I am really tired of seeing the Golden State Warriors versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. This would be the 4th year in a row, if I'm right. I don't need that. The NBA to me is, I love the NBA. You can see my fucked up Derrick Rose jersey right there. But it's, why even have a season? Like, just have those two teams go to the championship right at the beginning and let's get it over with. Because it's not, it's when it's that predictable, it's not that interesting. So Rockets versus Celtics at least would be different. And in that instance, I'd be rooting for the Rockets. They haven't been there since the mid 90s. They took the 2 titles in the years where Jordan left in my Bulls for a little while, and I think that they deserve a little comeback there. So that's who I would be supporting, is the Houston Rockets. Of course, that said, I'm a diehard Chicago Bulls fan, but right now I'd rather watch the Minnesota Timberwolves. You know what I mean? Like, if you watch the NBA, you know what I'm talking about. If I went for OG Xbox instead of Dreamcast, what game should I get? All right. So I would actually, if I were you, I would take a look at what is currently made backwards compatible with the Xbox One, because Microsoft already kind of cherry picked a lot of their biggest ones. The most expensive North American game to get out of the way, Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. Get that game. Just have it, because it's by far the most valuable. It's about $120 game, though I've seen it as low as $70. And that's your ceiling. That's why OG Xbox is great to collect, because that's the height one. That's the pinnacle. After that, it just falls drastically, and we're talking like bargain bin. Though I'm seeing less and less 50-cent $1 games and more like $5, $10 games. Probably because that market is finally coming up a bit. So it's I don't know, but that's what I would do, and that's still kind of what I am doing. Aren't you worried your girlfriend might be cheating on you? Not likely. She's in the other room sleeping, so no. We got a donation from Joshua Finzi. Hey Adam, what's going on with Adpocalypse currently? Is it improving or getting worse? Thank you very much, Joshua. Adpocalypse sucks, man. It actually got worse. I think it was last month. More advertisers pulled out. So YouTube, as much as we all shit on YouTube, it's not actually their fault. They're trying their best to convince advertisers to come back. So part of what happened is, let's say you got Starbucks, Walmart, McDonald's, Target, whoever, all these major companies. They all put ads on videos. So they're all competing for ad space. So therefore, whoever bids the highest to put an ad in front of, say, my video wins. And that's good for me because they bid the most money. Therefore, I get the biggest share of that, right? The problem is a whole bunch of these companies bailed. So now you're down to like nowhere near as much competitive space. So the ad space in front of my video is nowhere near as valuable as it used to be. And so that's happening across the board. It's not specific to me. My channel, this one personally, I would say is ad revenue wise has fallen probably about 50% over the last year and a half. Whereas Game Society has been, my other channel has been massively hit, like 80%. I haven't, because of the recent wave of updates. Who was it that just pulled out? There was some other major company. I don't remember who they are. I want to say they were a pharmaceutical company, but I could be wrong. Pulled out, and as a result of that, they ad space has gone even further down. But I don't have the updates on that because that's only a month ago, and you only get the updates like 45 days later. But I'm sure it's bad. So thank you very much for the donation, much appreciated. Why is Mrs. Claus so pretty and you are so damn not attractive? Probably because you're a dude and you're not into dudes. I'm glad I could help you settle where you fall on the sexual spectrum. He doesn't have to stop. I don't find this offensive. I get it. My girlfriend is better looking than me. I would rather be with my girlfriend than I would be with me. I mean, think about it. Do you think who do you think I would rather be hooking up with? My girlfriend or myself? My girlfriend. I have talked about Infinity War on my podcast. I'm not going to do it here because I don't like to ruin movies for people. This is unlike the podcast where you can skip the time code. This is a live stream. I don't want to accidentally be like, this happens, and then somebody who didn't see is like, fuck you. That's why I try to avoid movies that are at least relevant. You get like a year of spoilers, warnings, I guess. At least that's what I think. Does my Jaguar CD still work? Yes, it does. Yes, I heard about the Best Buy thing. I talked about it earlier. It's unfortunate. Let's just put it that way. Do you think OG Xbox / PS2 will be the last collectible consoles because of DLC, etc.? Neither of them are like ever going to be collectible consoles. Maybe Xbox because its library is reasonable. PS2 is too fucking big. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I mean, good for them. They had massive success. And obviously a lot of people really love the PS2. There was a reason it was so successful. There's multiple reasons. But it's too big of a library for people to get full sets of. I've seen some people who say, you know what, I'll at least just get the North American set. And that in of itself is like 2,000 titles. And then when you get into all the Japanese and European exclusives, like, I don't even know the number. I know it's like multiple thousands of titles. It's completely unrealistic. OG Xbox is cheap, and all titles combined doesn't even reach 1,000. I want to say it's 984 if I recall correctly, but it kind of it varies depending on what you count and don't count. In other words, to answer your question, I don't think they're ever going to reach that. OG Xbox, again, maybe. But PS2 will have very specific titles that are worth a bunch of money. But in general, the whole idea that everyone's trying to get full sets, no. It's not like, say, Dreamcast or something where you just never see those games. You see PS2 content all the time. Is there even a complete PS2 list? There has to be by now because it is finally done. The last game was Pro Evolution Soccer 2014. 2014. Look at the calendar right now. And then look at when PS2 came out. That should tell you how fucking big it actually was. You know what's really funny? I was actually contacted by... I don't think he would want me to give you his name, so I'm not going to. But I was contacted... I was contacted by a guy who used to work for the PlayStation division in Europe at around the time that Sony dropped a lot of the quality control for PS2. Let me back up here in case you're not aware. In Europe in about 2009, Sony dropped a lot of the quality control standards for PlayStation 2 games. So when develop. Basically, at that point, anybody who wanted to make a PS2 game could do it. You would just bring your game to Sony, and they would essentially publish it instead of having various standards and procedures in the way. You might want to think of it as red tape, or I would think of it as quality control. Rather than having that, they basically just dropped it and said, "Look, you want to make it, go ahead, and we'll just take our cut of whatever you make." Because at that point, the PlayStation 2 wasn't really relevant anymore. Once that happened in Europe, and that's the only place it happened was Europe, a fuck ton of shit games came through. This dude had the unfortunate task of he started working there when the locks were still in place, and he was doing a lot of testing for bugs and seeing like what passed and what didn't. And then they started bringing in all these like shit games. He was like, we can't do this. Or like, this is all awful. And every time they got one of these, it was like, oh god, we have to look for bugs in this like fucking animal soccer world crap. So yeah, he had that task, and he told me like the full story, but again, I don't know how much he'd be okay with me saying. So that's about all I'll say, is that I was in contact with one guy who had to at least test those fucking things. What's my favorite car related game? Probably Mario Kart 64, if that counts. Do I think the PS4 will hit 100 million units? What's it currently at? Because it's entirely possible. I actually think the Switch has a good chance at that too. PES 2014 came out in 2013. Yes, it did. Like all sports games, they come out like a year before they're advertised. Adam, AVGN wants to do a video with you. Somehow I doubt it. I've met him. I've met James before. He was very unaware of my existence. If that was true, somehow I don't think this is how I would be hearing about it. Let's just put it that way. Did I already discuss the Shenmue 3 delay? Yes, I did. Although there's not really much to say because I don't have any insights into that. My guess is they just need more development time, which I am in full support of. I have no desire to see them release a broken game just to reach an arbitrary release date. So people are saying it's like 76 million PS4s sold. Is that shipped or sold? Because shipped is very different. Hey Adam, after you complete your Xbox and Wii U collections, what would you look to complete next? Nothing. There's really nothing that I want to try and do at that point. Because there's stuff I'll chip away at, but there's no like obvious goal. One of them was always Sega Saturn, at least North American and European, but that has just become too financially irresponsible. And then the Japanese stuff is just too big. There's just too much of it, even when it's cheap. So it's, I don't know, maybe I'll revisit that someday. But as mentioned before, with like Adpocalypse being what it is, spending hundreds of dollars on Sega Saturn games, not really a priority, you know what I mean? First time watching you live, and you're awesome, dude. Thanks, man. I appreciate you watching. Have I played the TMNT 2007 movie game on 360? Yeah, I did. That's actually one of the easiest way to get 1,000 achievement points on the 360. We got a super chat from Animator223 Artisan Man CHF. I don't know what currency that is. That is not a dollar. Either way, thank you very much for the what currency is that? Does anybody know? I'm sorry, forgive my ignorance. I don't know what CHF is. But thank you very much for the donation. Damn it, no console war in chat. Xbox is better than PS4. Sorry, usually my viewers aren't children, or at least children that feel the need to argue like children. It's like, dude, we can all enjoy everything. They're plastic boxes. Let's just have some fun. What complete sets do you have? Dreamcast, Atari Jaguar CD. I'm one away from N-Gage, so I guess not that. I'm a few away from Wii U, so I guess not that. I'm trying to think. Those might be the only two that are actually like totally done. But I mean, I know that sounds like it's obviously not a lot, but like I have a lot of subsets of stuff, and I'm trying to think. Like, I don't want a full GameCube set. Certainly don't want a full PS2 set. Things like any cartridge console, like to me, is like totally impossible. So my goals are really just Xbox, Wii U, I guess N-Gage technically, and to a lesser extent Saturn. And to be honest, I think that's kind of where I would settle with it, because everything else would just be kind of like nice to have, like, you know, sure, a full Sega Saturn set with everything would be awesome, but really impractical. A full Neo Geo AES set. Can you even imagine such a thing? That'd be fucking amazing, but like totally impractical. And then things that are even more doable, I guess, but I don't really want to, like full N64. I have completed the PAL subset of all the 7 PAL games that came out, that we didn't get. And as Devin right there points out, I am very close to the Japanese exclusive subset. But then when you look at my North American N64 stock, it's like I don't even have close to the majority. So I guess at a very far distance would be N64, but only if the American games become cheap. The Japanese games are super cheap, which is why it was kind of a fun goal. The PAL stuff, there's so few of them, it was just kind of neat to try. But the American stuff is like, there's a lot of it, relatively, and it's not super cheap, so it's not really very fun. Approximately how many Saturn games do you currently own? Like I said, I have 31 of the 32 PAL stuff. The North American stuff, I think I have like around 100 of them, and there's like 244. I don't remember offhand. It's been a long time since I looked into it. AES Complete Collection. Wife would kill me. So would the loan shark you'd have to talk to, because that would be expensive. N64 set was easy. It probably was easy. I know a few people who did it, but like it's a little different now. A lot of them are much more expensive. How expensive is the FM Towns Marty in Japan? I have never seen one over there. I've only seen it, ironically, in the States twice. One time at the Missouri Game Con last year. It wasn't for sale. My buddy Bob, who's one of the people who runs that convention, owns one, signed by Luke Morris, of all people. And the only one I've ever seen for sale is a boxed one at Video Games New York and Manhattan. I've never seen one in Japan. How many OG Xbox games do you have? I don't remember offhand. Like I said, I have the full, all the Asian stuff, which is like 50 games. I have most of the PAL exclusives, which is like 70 something. And then North American stuff, I'm a couple hundred in, I think. What's my favorite feature of the Dreamcast? This is going to sound weird, but probably the VGA output. The fact that Sega thought to put that on there and help really future-proof the console to a certain extent is pretty impressive for 1998. Have I ever met John Hancock? No, though he does follow me on like Facebook and Twitter and stuff. I don't know if we've ever even had an interaction directly, but no, I've never met him. We got a donation here from Michael Gorst, who says, "Hi Adam, big fan of the channel. My questions are how far are you from completing your OG Xbox collection, and are you a fan of roller coasters?" Well, it's funny, I just kind of answered the Xbox question. Like I said, almost done with the PAL stuff, and then North American stuff. There's a whole big line of it, but with the North American stuff, I don't think there's any heavy hitters left. I think I just mostly have junk to find, which is just a matter of doing it, which I really could do at like conventions and things, but you know, it's just like I said, it's just a matter of doing it. As for roller coasters, no. I never was, never will be. I've ridden on them. It's, you know, things like Six Flags, you know, and stuff like that, but I don't particularly enjoy it, especially the concept of going like in a loop-de-loop. I just really never liked that shit. So there you go. I do like theme parks and rides, just not roller coasters specifically. Though I did enjoy the Viper at, if anybody remembers that, at Six Flags Great America. I don't know if that's at all of them, but at least it was at that the one in Chicago. Do you have the HDMI box for the Dreamcast, the Akura? Bahar Bros will release the Gecko. I hadn't heard about the Gecko. I do have the Akura. They actually sent me the first prototype unit. My video on it was the first one. I have actually not heard about the Gecko, so if you have more information, I'm very curious what that is. Hi Adam, any news on the Shenmue 1 and 2 HD release date? Will it be delayed too? So if you're not aware, Sega brought me out to Japan for all that. I have a lot of information on all that. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to talk about it as per NDAs I signed, so I can't answer your question. Sorry. I do know the release date. I admit it. I know it, but I can't talk about it. So that's all I'll say. But I can say it's definitely coming out in 2018. Zmod Super Chat says, "Do you have a special insurance riders? Wait, what? Do you have special insurance riders on your collection?" I assume you mean, do I have the video game collection insured? The answer to that would be no. Probably should, but it's constantly changing, so it's like I assume you'd have to constantly be reassessed. Any thoughts on picking a Bandai Pladia? I want one. Again, the only time I've ever seen one was, funny enough, was also Bob, who worked on the Missouri Game Con, owns one of those too. I've never seen one in Japan. Again, I don't know why. Some of those consoles you would expect to find, I've just never seen over there. If I were to get it, it would be purely just to get it. Like, there's nothing on there I actually want. I can't even name a game on that platform. Roller Coaster Talk makes me remember the Roller Coaster Tycoon game. Funny enough, I thought the exact same thing. That was kind of what was floating around in my mind when you said, when that question was asked. Adam, I'm about to buy my first Shenmue 2 import for Dreamcast. Any tips before I buy? Yes, use Codebreaker as your boot disk, and I'm assuming you're American or at least Canadian, so North America. So what I suggest is also there's a disk you can burn, which is one of the few instances where I recommend doing that with the Dreamcast. About the point of which is it allows you to convert your North American game save of Shenmue 1 and convert it so that it will function when you play Shenmue 2, so you can transfer your save from the first game to the second. That would be my two big pieces of recommendation. Use Codebreaker for your import disk, download and burn the Shenmue file save converter for that purpose as well, and then play it in VGA if you can. Now that Sony's ending Vita physical cards next year in North America and Europe, how do you think that will affect prices? I think the Vita will probably be very collectible at some point because it's got a lot of quality content on it that I know a lot of people really care about and really like. But the mass audiences just never gravitated to it. So I think it's gonna be more of a gamer's handheld eventually. And to be honest, until that news broke, I didn't even know they were really still producing them, other than the limited run game stuff and the Japanese stuff. But I guess this is their way of saying like everything's done, over, done. So yeah, I could definitely see that, and especially with all that limited run games content that exists for that thing. Yeah, I could see that being a tough one down the line for collectors. It's not. I'm not going to get into it. I don't. Vita was never something that really interested me. Hell, I don't even own one. I do have a PS TV, but not a Vita. Does Shenmue 2 PAL run in 60 Hz? Yes, it does. All European Dreamcast games run in 60 Hertz on a North American console. They will prompt you at the beginning to ask if you want to play in 60 Hertz or 50 Hertz. Select 60 and you're good to go. Why do you think Nintendo locked European GameCubes to 50 Hertz? There's many questions as to why Nintendo does what it does. I mean, they really screwed up the GameCube in Europe over there. I don't know why. I assume logic would suggest it was some sort of cost-cutting measure, but that doesn't even add up when you really want to put that under scrutiny, because like they had to go out of their way to disable it. I really don't know. Yeah, that's just a good question, but I couldn't tell you the answer. I certainly don't know. Am I going to too many games this year? Probably not. I would like to, but I don't think that's going to happen. I've been told it's a soft no. We'll see. That could change, but my guess is probably not. What kind of camera am I using? Just an old Logitech webcam, nothing special. It's actually obviously very not special. It's very old. Um, any Stefan says Shenmue 1 will have no time skip feature in the HD remaster, correct? Um, if you mean, are they going to take the feature of Shenmue 2 and integrate it into Shenmue 1? The answer is no, they're not doing that. Where the hell are the virtual console games on Switch? My guess is Nintendo has a completely different method by which they intend to resell you games you've already owned for years. And I guess that's not the one they picked. Loved your video about that gaming street in Paris. Oh yeah, I'm glad you liked that. What he's talking about is, I think it was a couple months ago for Playload, I I went to both Paris and Tokyo in the same month. It was fucking nuts. And I showed this street in I think it's the Republique district in Paris. There's like this street just full of various retro game stores. It's really very weird. It's awesome. Best place in Europe I've ever found to have retro games. They're expensive because that makes sense. You're in the heart of Paris, but tons of content in a way I've never seen anywhere else. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't other places. It just means I haven't found them. But that's a little bit like European Akihabara or Akihabara, however you want to pronounce it, in the sense that it's all spectacle, it looks great, and all the content is kind of absorbed there, but the prices are much worse than you would find outside of those areas. But the difference between Japan and at least the parts of Europe I've been to is in Japan, you can still find stuff everywhere. In Europe, I don't have that kind of luck. I always have to rely on locals to tell me, and then even then, it usually comes down to like fucking sports games. Was I in Hawaii when the volcano eruption happened? Yes, I was, but I was nowhere near it. That happened on the main island. I was on Oahu, which is where Honolulu is, which is where I was. You would never even know that was happening when you were there, unless people didn't keep tweeting at you, like, "Oh my god, did you die?" It's like, no, I'm fine. Like nothing's happening here. Got a donation from Rob Janos. Says, have you gotten a chance to play the Retro Fighters N64 controller? Are you talking about the Brawler? No, but spoiler alert, I will be doing a review of one of those at some point. I just don't know when. I'm basically waiting for the new one to ship. And when that happens, I'll be able to make it. If that's what you're talking about, then that's the answer. If there's something different called Retro Fighters N64 controller I'm unaware of, then the answer would be no. Thank you very much, Rob, for the donation. Much appreciated. Not too many retro areas, or not too many retro game stores in my area. I live in Texas. Obviously, Texas is huge. Texas is fun. I've been there a few times this year already. I was just in Houston, but that was just to change planes. What part of Texas are you in? The only part of Texas I know of with like a pretty active game scene would be Austin. But I mean, you know, the Retropalooza happens every year there. I think 3 times a year, like once in San Antonio, once in Dallas, and once in Houston. You should be going to those. The last one was in San Antonio in April, which was a weird event because I didn't get to go to that, even though I was in San Antonio in like January, and I ran into the people who run it, and they said, "Why haven't you come to our convention? We'd love to have you." And I was like, "Sure, contact me." They totally never did. So it's whatever. If that changes, I would totally go. Thoughts on the Xbox One Duke? I assume you're talking about the re-release being crap quality. If you're talking about the original controller, that doesn't surprise me. I never really liked that big version of the controller, and there's a reason that the S was more interesting. If you're talking about the GameStop exclusive, I think it was Hyperkin controller, I have not used it, but no part of me is surprised by that. Microsoft didn't make it themselves, and it's the Duke. Like, you took the wrong design. You took the one people remember for nostalgic reasons, but you forgot the whole reason why you changed the controller in the first place. It wasn't good to begin with. So I kind of, when I first heard about that, I was like, that's neat. I hope they do it with the better controller, because I really have no desire to use the Duke. And if I have, like I said, haven't used one yet, so I can't. But if it turns out that controller is shit, it's like, oh, that's, okay. Guess I'm not that surprised. So I don't know. Like I said, I haven't used it personally, but I guess I wouldn't be that surprised. But I'd be happy to review it if I've had one, but I don't. Are the recap videos your most popular? Depends on how you define that. My most popular video, straight up, I think, is actually Back to the Future 4. Which would be like the thing I actually do the least on this channel. But let's take a look. I'm actually curious myself. but I'm pretty sure that's the most viewed video. Yep, looking right at it right now. That is the most viewed video on this channel is Back to the Future 4. If I look down and just get a general sense of it, most of my most popular videos are either cleaning console videos, repairing videos, or hooking your console up to a TV. The most popular one is Back to the Future 4. Then it's a video called Why Isn't Nintendo Hardware Powerful? Which is really a funny video in hindsight because a lot of people give me shit for that because they always miss a very key element of that discussion. But that doesn't matter right now. Cleaning videos on PS2, running your Dreamcast with HDMI, cleaning Xbox, using PS2 with component, de-yellowing SNES, cleaning PS2 Slim, cleaning N64, hooking up old game console. The most popular recap video is the GameCube one. I didn't even know that shit. Then the Saturn one, and then Back to the Future 5, then the Dreamcast one. You're following, you're getting the sense here. So I guess no, although I would say they're easily the most commented on. In that when people are talking about mentioning me for one reason or another, when they're like, oh yeah, dude, I've watched your stuff, usually those are the reason. But I've noticed that's through online media. The thing I get recognized the most for, like conventions or whatever, or even off the street, which has happened, which is flattering as fuck, makes no sense to me, but the most common ones are the cleaning videos. Like where you just see my hands. But for some reason, that's the one that people know. I don't get it. I never did. Probably never will. But hey, I'm happy. As long as people are enjoying the content, that's really all I care about. Have I been to Colorado? Our retro game scene is near dead. I was there just last year. Dude, I went to all 50 states by the time I was 13. I get around a lot. But I went to Denver last year. That's the most recent time I've been to Colorado. But yes, as you point out, I don't recall there being any retro gaming draw. I'm trying to think about it. I actually kind of considered trying to find something when I was there, and Google just kept recommending GameStop. So yeah, you're probably onto something with that, but I just kind of assumed I just didn't know where to go, so whatever. Davey Hughes super chats. He says, say developers. Good old Stephen Ballmer reference. Thank you for the super chat. Watching in the middle of class. I regret nothing. Well, thank you. Castlemania Games says, first found the channel because of the cleaning videos. See, there you go. A lot of people find him for that reason. You know, it's kind of funny. Like I said, that's something I'm very well known for, but that really was never like a plan. In fact, I thought those videos would be rejected hand over fist when I started doing them, because they were so different than the normal content. But as I recall, my feeling at the time was like, I don't remember which one I started with, but whatever console it was, I kind of just felt like I wanted to clean it. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to just take this apart, clean it. I'll film it. Why not? You know, maybe someone will find that interesting. When I really thought nobody would, because I remember watching it back for the first time. I was like, I don't know if I would enjoy this, but whatever. And I decided to release it. I almost didn't release it because I was almost like, maybe this isn't the right way to go, but I did it anyway. And I'm glad I did, obviously. And there's actually more of those coming. I just haven't had the time to produce them or even film them. It's weird. I got a stack of some consoles I just need to fix and do stuff, but I haven't been able to. Just haven't had time. Do I own a Sony PVM or BVM? No, I do not. GameSack bought everything in Colorado. I'm sorry to hear that. Gameforce in Denver / Pueblo, or Holes in the Wall, I assume are recommended stores. Who makes the longest lasting hardware? Sega and the Sega Master System. You can debate that console came out in 1983 in the form of the Sega Mark III in Japan and is still, to this day, active in Brazil. Has not stopped. Not through clones or anything. We're talking Sega still licenses it, and not through some weird, like those Genesis at-game re-releases. I mean, they never stopped production of the Master System down there. It is still an active console, largely because of Brazil's like weird taxes and imports and all that type of shit, and it predates a lot of that, so it's okay to just keep going with it. But as a result, the Sega Master System is the world's longest lasting console. It's older than I am. Greetings from England. Shout out to all the Europeans who are still up. I agree, Rob. Yeah, thank you guys in Europe who are still up for this. I know Europeans usually get shafted on this type of thing, and I'm sorry for that. I try to be a tad more accommodating by starting a little bit earlier than most people would, but, you know, I got other things I have to do, too, at the same time. Plus, I've also noticed YouTube analytics. This is kind of one of those, like, vicious circle type of things. I noticed that if I start a show earlier in the day to make it better for Europeans, Americans don't watch. And according to YouTube analytics, my like 60% of my audience is American. So if I did this a couple of times. If I started a live show earlier, a lot of the Europeans just don't show up for it. I don't blame you guys for it. It's just you guys aren't as big of a percentage of my audience. And so if I started late, you know, more Americans show up and just more viewers. I know it's shitty, but it's like you can never really escape that. It's like I'd love to start earlier for Europeans, but then if I do, Europeans don't show up, so then there's no reason to show up, so I start later. You get my point? It sucks, but that's why I try to do it a little bit better. But then, of course, the Australians get screwed. Sorry about that. You can't please everybody. Hey, Adam, how's the handheld recap coming? Also, any fun trips coming? I have not started anything on the handheld recap stuff. Eventually, that will happen. Some of the delays, if you want to call it that, those are not intentional. It's kind of nice because I end up picking other stuff up that I can include in those videos eventually whenever they're produced. But as I was telling people earlier, like why the SG-1000 one isn't out is just time. I just haven't had time for the reason you cite after that, which is fun trips coming up. Fun, I don't dislike all the traveling. It's just, you know, it's usually work related. So, but I do have things coming up, although I don't know how much of it I'm privy to say. So I won't at this time. But I suffice it to say, I think I joked at the beginning of this year that in 2016, I spent 5 months collectively not at home. 2017, I spent about 6 months not at home. And then I said that in 2018, we were going for 7 months not at home. Without hyperbole, I think we're very much on track for that because I'm almost never here, dude. So like I looked at the schedule I've got now. I'm going to, this is going to sound fucked up and I'm going to be, how do I even say this? I don't know if I can say this. So all I'm going to say is that I am flying around a lot in the next, I already know my next 4 or 5 flights. Some of which are international. So I'm going to leave it at that for now because I don't know what I'm allowed to say. Have I ever been to Los Angeles? Many times. In fact, that one I can say. I will be at E3 in Los Angeles this year, and I was there last year for it. But I'll be back. Tomorrow's a holiday in Germany, so it's fine for Germans. Yeah, can we pretend Germans? Can I get a pass? Can we pretend that I knew that and I like was totally accommodating? Can we just agree on that one? Would that be cool? Closing in on 100,000 subs. Yep, I'm surely hopeful that comes soon. I was so much closer, and then YouTube did another one of those purges. That hurt. That took like 400 out of the equation, and I was like, fuck, because if they hadn't done that, I'd pretty much be there right now. Hey Adam, you should check out a video called How Dragon Ball Z Saved the Sega Saturn. It's a great video by a Portuguese YouTuber about how the Saturn was actually successful there. That wouldn't surprise me because Dragon Ball Z was, I believe the Saturn version of that was, other than Japan, it did come out in Europe, but I think the only countries in Europe it came out in was Portugal and Spain. I remember that because I had to find it. I bought it in Portugal. I remember that. Although I didn't know that would be considered saving it, but obviously it was strong enough to do at least that. What is your favorite place to visit and not for gaming related stuff? That's tough. Define gaming related stuff. Like, just like, oh, I need to go find a touristy area, as opposed to anything tangentially connected with video games. Um, this might be biased because I don't know. That's a tough one. All right, let's put it this way. Recently, I had a chance to go to Guam, which is a part of the United States that most Americans don't know we have. And I could talk more about it later, I guess. But that I really didn't have to do much of anything, and there is the only GameStop relevant, or I just guess I just gave it away there. The only video game relevancy that they have is basically GameStop. So like, there's nothing to buy, nothing really is happening there. I got to go for basically non-video game related reasons, and I really enjoyed that. It was I basically, that expression, find your beach. I found my beach, and it was in Guam. It was very relaxing. That's why I got a bit of a tan going on right now. It was very, very nice. So it might be that. That, and I discovered the Chamorro burger, which, my fellow Americans, that is one of the greatest kept food secrets in our country. Is this type of burger that they do in Guam, because I believe I forgive my ignorance, but Chamorro, I believe, it was basically the name for the culture. And then the burger is just like the way they spice it and the sauces and whatever. But the way they do it, it's fucking amazing. And I'd love to see that make its way over here to the mainland. Hey, I've been watching your stuff for years. Love the content. Big thank you from the UK. Well, thank you very much for staying up and watching. Much appreciated. Gas station hot dogs or New York style pizza? New York style pizza. What kind of question is that? Of course I would do that. New York style pizza is solid stuff. Which E3 press conference are you the most excited for? I really want to see Microsoft's, because I don't have any major expectations from them, as you guys will find out in my podcast, which comes out next week. But at the same time, they have the most to prove, in my opinion. Like, they have the most reason to try hard to excite me. Like, I know Nintendo is going to bring the games, like, regardless of their presentation. And Sony is so top of the hill right now that I don't expect them to impress me. I expect them to keep doing, not rock the boat, keep doing what they're doing, which will, frankly, in my opinion, probably lead to a not particularly exciting press conference. But it doesn't really matter. So that's kind of my logic going into it. Microsoft has the chance of surprising me the most with something. Like last year, they blew my fucking mind with OG Xbox support. That was the most exciting announcement from last year, in my opinion. If we're talking about those three, if you expand it to the other developers, in my humble opinion, Ubisoft had the most exciting and shocking press conference. I hope they can repeat that, but frankly, I don't expect them to. Like Square Enix and Bethesda and all those, I don't expect to be blown away by any of them. So I guess I would say Microsoft, with that caveat of like, it's not so much that I think they will surprise me. I think they just have the best chance of it, if that makes any sense. Do you think they'll announce the PS5? I really doubt it. I think it's too early for that. And I kind of feel like they would want to do that at their own event. But obviously, I could be very wrong about that. None of us really know. I kind of hope the PS5 doesn't come out soon. I don't think it would come out soon. Like, if they did some, like, Sega Saturn level shit where they're like, oh yeah, we're announcing it. Oh, and by the way, it's available today. That would be bad. Although there's no way they could keep that a secret at this point. But, I think the earliest you'd see the PS5 is like 2020. And we still don't know anything about that concept or if it's even real. And if it would have disc-based media or anything like that, I get the feeling that they're probably not going to have any sort of comment on that this year, but I wouldn't be as surprised next year. Sour Maro super chats. Hi Adam, been a while since I caught you live. Well, thanks. Welcome back. Much appreciated. Dude, you're OG. You've been around a long time. Welcome back. Do you collect arcade stuff based on Dreamcast hardware like Sega Naomi or at Thomas Wave? No. There was a brief time where I flirted with the concept of doing that, but then it was like one of those things that's totally impractical. It's never going to happen for me. No. So where is Skyrim going to go this year? The Apple Watch? Um, it's obviously I get the joke. Yeah, I don't know where else you could even put it that doesn't already exist. I think that I, I think they've gotten what they can out of Skyrim at this point. I don't think you can really do anything other than I wouldn't be surprised if they do some sort of like Elder Scrolls collection. I actually think the thing you're going to see more of is I think I said it in my podcast is like you'll probably see some sort of Fallout collection for Switch or something like that, or even Xbox One and PS4. Like we're doing remasters of New Vegas and Fallout 3. Like that wouldn't surprise me at all. Thoughts on the lack of DLC for 2005 Battlefront 2 on Xbox One? I'm not even remotely surprised. There's really nothing stopping that from happening whenever, if they ever decide to turn on those servers, but I'm not sure they can. Um, but if they do it, that would be great. But no part of me is surprised. I'm frankly just thrilled that they even made it over there. That's just fucking amazing in of itself. Have I completed my Wii U set? Not yet. How long do you think until you reach 100,000 subs? Well, I obviously miscalculated because I didn't account for a sub purge that YouTube did, which took a massive chunk away from me. I honestly thought it would happen after the previous live show. That's why that one was called the not quite 100,000 subscriber special, because that was supposed to be the 100,000 subscriber special, basically. Yet you look at it right now, and we're still not there, and it's been a month. But I would have made it if not for that sub purge they did. That was a big bad fucking day. Game Society lost like 1,500 subs that day. It was annoying. Super chat from Ultron60. Hi, Adam. I'm Zach Gander, by the way. I just changed my name. Well, thank you very much for the super chat. If you have any questions, let me know. But hi, Zach. Remasters. They would probably just port the PC versions. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah. Basically, they could kind of do like with what 2K did with like Bioshock Infinite when they did the Bioshock collection. Just basically turn the settings up. It's just, okay, yeah, it's the remaster. What? Best Buy? You didn't hear? Best Buy is discontinuing the Gamers Club Unlocked feature, which is depressing. If you have it already, it'll be good until your subscription ends, and then you can't renew it. What the hell is, what the hell is a sub purge? So every once in a while, YouTube will go in and basically delete. What they claim is they delete dead accounts that haven't been logged into in a certain amount of time. So let's say some guy subscribed to me like 3 years ago, and then he hasn't logged in or used YouTube since. I don't know the time. That was a completely arbitrary statement, but after a certain amount of time, they basically just decide, okay, that guy doesn't exist anymore, and they delete the account. So if he was subscribed to you, you lost that subscriber. I get that. That makes sense. It's annoying when you're trying to hit milestones. It's supposed to reflect a better understanding of your audience based on your numbers. So if like, for example, if I had 100,000 subscribers and I was only getting 1,000 views per video, but like 90,000 of my subscribers were dead accounts, then it's like, oh, that's probably partially why. So it's supposed to give you a better reflection of that. At least that's the goal. The flip side of that, though, is that it can make you look really bad when you're like, hey, look, here's my channel, and here's what, oh, look, the number just massively fell. I get why they do it. It's just kind of annoying. But at the same time, a lot of people will come to you later and be like, I used to be subscribed to you. I don't know what the hell happened. YouTube just unsubbed me to you. And that happened to me, actually, on the sub purge day. There were a few people I watched where I noticed, like, their new videos were in my recommended section, but they wouldn't show up in the subscriber section. And then I would click on their channel and I realized I'm no longer subscribed to them. It's like, God damn it. So YouTube fucks that up a lot. It's annoying, to say the least. Have I ever considered streaming on Twitch? Not really. I have no audience there, and I kind of just don't want to start over. I do have an account there, but I don't do anything with it. Like Classic Game Room with the 400,000 subs and 4K views. Believe me, I can relate to that one. Mark is in the same kind of position that my other channel is, where you basically have a giant sub count, but YouTube has basically spam terminated your channel. That's just the term I'm using. But basically what it means is that you have enough content on there with enough flags where they just kind of consider the channel let's say, advertiser dangerous. And as a result, they don't really recommend your content to anybody. So the only people who ever see it are your like devout fans who follow you incessantly. And the majority of your fans never see the video in their subscription feed, and it never recommends your videos to new subscribers. It sucks, man. And I completely empathize with Mark because I know what that's like on running another channel that has that same issue. We got a super chat from Dennis Pevstov. Let's try this together, guys. Sound it out. Basic elementary school here. Pevtsov. Donates 2 of that CHF currency, which I still don't know what that is, but thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. If you have a question, let me know. Do I like Disney? Yes, I do. You know, I enjoy their content. It's hard not to. I enjoy, right now I've been seeing that Infinity Gauntlet meme with Mickey. Oh, I have the Infinity Gauntlet. And in it I put Marvel, and I put Pixar, and I put Lucasfilm, and now I put Fox. Now who's next? Sony Pictures! Like, I mean, you know, who else is he going to take? You know what I mean? Like, eventually you're going to have all 6 of, like, whatever, and... I will be the ultimate ruler of the galaxy! Oh, it's the Swiss franc. Okay, thank you, guys. Have I ever tried Discord? Yeah, I have a Discord for my other channel, for Game Society. This channel does not have a Discord. It has been suggested a few times, but honestly, I wouldn't have time to moderate it. Like, I could create it and I could be in there, but really I'd be like, hey guys, all right, sorry, I don't have time to talk. Like, I wouldn't have time to like hang out in there. You guys probably don't know, I do Mickey Mouse's voice for a show for Disneyland Adventures for the Xbox 360. Not the game, like literally on my other channel, Game Society, we do a show where I basically play Mickey Mouse and Stitch.
Stitch, this is Stitch. Ohana means family, and I'm gonna rip your family to death.
My version of Stitch is very horrible, very, very awful. Don't ever hang out with him. He's not nice. He's like really what Stitch would be without the Disney handcuffs, I think. Anyway, so I play those characters on there, so it's not a very... it's not uncommon for me to break out into those two. Anyway, what was the point we were making? I don't even remember. I'm gonna see Deadpool 2. Saw it this morning. You know, Caleb says he doesn't feel good, and well, dude, get some sleep. Oh yeah, we were talking about this channel having a Discord. Yeah, like I said, there's no reason to really. I don't think there's enough demand for it. Only a handful of people have ever asked for it, so I think it would be kind of a dead community. It wouldn't be like this, is my guess. Plus, I don't know if there's anything more narcissistic in concept than being like, guys, here's a Discord dedicated to me. Come check it out. Be there all day. I don't have time to, but you totally should. I don't know. That's just my current opinion of it. Dennis Pevstov. I still suck. I'm sorry. Dennis Pevtsov. Thank you. He super chats 20 Swiss francs, who says, I wanted to send 20. Here you go. Been watching you since 2012. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I really do. Seriously. Thank you. Isn't Sony close to closing its door? Heard they aren't making that much. As a corporation, they were struggling for quite some time. They're doing a lot better as of the last year. PlayStation division is killing it. You guys have to remember, just because PlayStation's doing good doesn't mean the company is doing well. Those are different divisions. They don't offset each other. They try, but they don't make enough. It's very possible the Sony film division will close its doors and be sold to somebody, but it's hard to say who. Wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, if I buy it and add Spider-Man, fully controlling him.
Plus, then you would get Ghostbusters, I guess. Best game shops in Seattle other than Pink Gorilla. So yeah, shout out to my buddy Kelsey Lewin. She runs Pink Gorilla. Who else is there? Not another. No, sorry, no. Let me think of. Your Princess is in another castle. Another Castle Games is over there. They have a couple of stores. Pink Gorilla, like I said, has a couple of stores. The Goodwill's over there. At least when I used to shop more extensively over there, were much better. God, there used to be a bunch, but as far as I know, a few of them shut down. I have a playlist of North American game hunting. Look that up, especially some of the older ones, because there's quite a few in there from what I recall. But I actually don't remember the names. But I remember Seattle being like the best spot in the United States for retro game hunting. Next Gen Collector asks me a whole bunch of questions about the Shenmue 1 and 2 re-release that I can't possibly answer for NDA reasons. Sorry. How do you think the Venom movie will perform? Probably poorly. The Venom movie is basically designed to attempt to hijack the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that really pisses me off. Does anybody care? Do we want to talk about that? If you want to talk about that, let me know. Otherwise, we're just gonna move on before we all get pissed. Ghostbusters 2016 will forever be remembered as the movie that killed Sony if that ever happened. That didn't do him any favors. That's for fucking sure. Discord could be a nice place to exchange ideas on cleaning and maintaining consoles, finding people to play old games with, X-Link Kai, for example, or for trading. Yeah, but that's essentially like Facebook groups. Like, do I need to be tangentially connected to that? Because then I have to like moderate it if people have like disputes. It's like, why involve myself in that? That makes sense? Is Disney in monopoly territory? Probably not, because they're strictly an entertainment division, which is part of the reason Fox could only sell some of its assets to Disney, and why the WB/AT&T merger failed was because it encroached on territories they had no business in. But you know, Disney is purely entertainment, so you can't really own entertainment because technically, like, YouTube's a competitor for Disney. So I don't think they're gonna have that issue. Am I ever going to make more rare variants videos? Definitely. It's just a matter of time. People do want to hear about the Venom movie. Okay, so from what all right. Venom is obviously in the Spider-Man universe of characters. As we all know now, Spider-Man, portrayed by Tom Holland, is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so he's hanging with the Avengers. The behind the scenes of that is basically that Sony ran the Spider-Man franchise into the fucking ground. The film franchise. And at one point, they were so confident in their reboot of Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man, they decided to give up in exchange for renegotiating the profits of the films, they gave up all the toy merchandising rights back to Disney. So it's the Spider-Man toys, which actually was the most profitable toy line of any comic book character combined, like all of them. Like, all the DC characters and all the other Marvel characters combined do not sell the kind of toys that Spider-Man does by himself. But they gave that up because they were that sure that their new Spider-Man universe was going to be huge. Their new Spider-Man universe tanked, and then all of a sudden they had this property that wasn't doing very well, that they had really kind of crippled. And then at the same time, they fired Andrew Garfield, the replacement Spider-Man, because he failed to show up to an event in Brazil. So then they realized they were going to have to reboot that universe again. And they would have no choice, because if they didn't do it within 2 years, they would actually lose all claim to Spider-Man. So they realized they were in a bit of a pickle. And at the same time, Sony as a corporation, especially then, was doing very, very poorly, with the exception, again, of PlayStation. So Sony was in a bargaining position. Then the North Korean hack happened to them, and a lot of information came out about what was happening with them, which is why we know so much about this now. So when that happened, they were willing to make a deal. And they basically went to Disney and said, look, let's renegotiate how the Spider-Man thing works. We will let you essentially borrow the character, and you can put him into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You'll get 3 Marvel movies, which would be Captain America Civil War, Marvel's Avengers Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2. And then at the same time, Disney would help basically make the Spider-Man Homecoming movies and put Sony's name on it. That's pretty much what that was. Sony funded the production of those movies, but Disney actually made them. They hired all the talent, they controlled them, they did all that stuff, just put Sony's name on it. And then Sony did all the marketing for those, which is why the trailers for those give everything away. that part pisses me off in of itself. Anyway, so the part of that deal was that Tom Holland had to do 6 films, the 3 I already mentioned, plus the 3 standalone movies. The problem with that is that the two Disney's only connected to the first one and the second one. This third one is a mystery, and Sony can technically force Tom Holland to do cameos. So along comes Venom. The 2 guys who are most responsible for running the Sony franchise, which I believe is, I want to say Avi Arad is one of them, and I can't remember the name of the other. Maybe not Tom Rothman. Oh, he's incompetent. But anyway, so these guys are responsible for basically running Spider-Man into the ground, and they're the ones who greenlit Venom. And they greenlit this side character Venom movie that has nothing to do with the Marvel Cinematic Universe in an attempt to basically make you think it's part of it. And rumor has it that Tom Holland will be forced to appear in it against Disney's will, and basically against his will. That's the story at the moment. Now, if that happens, to the uninformed viewer, you look at this Venom movie, you kind of know the character, you know Spider-Man, then you see the Avengers version of Spider-Man in that movie, you're like, oh, okay, I guess it must be part of it. Sony's saying it is, or is essentially saying it is. Amy Pascal said it would be, and then Kevin Feige, who runs the Marvel Cinematic Universe, was like infamously like no. Like he has this no face. What are you talking about? Look on his face when she says that in the interview. They're essentially, if you play that out to its logical conclusion, you're essentially trying to make a movie for the Marvel Cinematic Universe without consent to do so, and trying to legitimately make people believe it based on a deal you had made previously. Now, why would they do that, other than the obvious of like, oh, we want to make money? Because they want to have a better bargaining position by the time that deal expires. The Disney Spider-Man deal with Sony has been very good for Sony. They got a giant paycheck from the success of Homecoming. And it's not like they want that to go away. The problem is Disney is not stupid. They know that Sony as a film studio is not in good shape. And when the deal comes around, they know that Sony's desperately going to want to renew it. That desperation gives Disney, frankly, the upper hand and better bargaining position. But if Sony successfully gets a different Spider-Man universe off the ground, starting with Venom, starting with Homecoming, and then having Venom kind of tangentially connected and making all these other shit movies, I'm sure they're going to be bad, and then saying, that's fine, we can pluck him out of the Avengers and throw him in there, and people, the mass audiences will think he's part of, these movies are all part of that, and you can't really stop us from saying they are. That's kind of the weird position they're putting themselves in. And I think they're just doing that so when they go back to the negotiation table, Disney doesn't have as strong of an upper hand. If you don't like that concept as much as I don't like it, vote with your wallet. Don't go see Venom. Because I guarantee you Venom's going to suck. Would anybody be surprised? Like, really? I know people think I hate Sony. I really don't. They're great at a lot of things. But objectively, as a film studio, they suck. They are so fucking ham-fisted with their product placement, like all these goddamn Adam Sandler movies, and the way they bury and ruin franchises like Spider-Man and stuff. It's like, don't do it. Ghostbusters is a perfect example of that. Like, you make a terrible remake for no reason. You screw up what the fans actually wanted. You do it totally just the wrong way. And then on top of that, we're forced to be subjected to like stupid things like the characters using Sony brand cameras when no one would do that anymore. Stuff like that. Although, I mean, credit where credit's due. Every once in a while they come through. Like, I watched the new Jumanji movie, which I thought that was going to be shit. I was like, there's no way that's good. Watched it. I've seen it like 3 times. That is a good fucking movie. Despite the random Sony cameo products everywhere. Like, the kid's always obsessed with PS1, then he's always obsessed with PS4 and all that shit. Only has Sony products in his house. I get it. That's what they do. But every once in a while, they make something competent. Emoji Movie, right there, as Jacob points out, perfect example of why Sony is a bad film studio. When I first heard about the Emoji Movie just in concept, we were doing a live show on my other channel on Game Society, and somebody mentioned, he's like, do you guys hear about this thing called Emoji Movie that's getting greenlit? I just flat out said, I'll bet you that's a Sony movie. And the person I was talking to said, like, how could you possibly know that? I'm like, I'll just bet you. Let's look it up. So then he looked it up on his own. And they went, oh my God, it is a Sony movie. I'm like, yep, only Sony would greenlight something like that. because they're desperate to capture this nostalgic boom that's going on, but they don't have the IPs to do it. So it's something like that. People, they kind of think, oh, that's somewhat nostalgic. It's like something everybody kind of knows. Let's go with that. So there you go. I don't want Sony to be making this tangentially connected Spider-Man universe that's like pretending it is. And that movie exists just for bargaining posture. Is that really something you want to support? I don't. But again, it could be great. I doubt it. I was obviously wrong about Jumanji. I thought that thing would be complete crap, but that was actually a fun movie to watch. Anyway, what were we talking about? Scott Bakula. Yes, I've heard the name. He was Captain Archer, Star Trek. I don't know why we're talking about him, but he must be in something we're talking about. Is he in Venom or something? What are my thoughts on the new Atari console? The Atari box is not a console. I think they're just calling it Atari VCS, right? It's just a fucking clone console. It's essentially the NES Classic, but with Atari hardware. Like, why does anyone give a fuck? That's not a thing. It's gonna be bullshit. And then I had to go through what was it, like Indiegogo to get it funded. That's horse shit. Don't support that. Any plans on buying a kiosk for your place? I have a Dreamcast kiosk. If Sony gets close to bankruptcy, their studio should go. I think if any division of Sony was likely to be sold off first, it would be the film division. And
I know one very tempted buyer.
do you still think your old future streaming console era predictions will come true? Probably. You mean the concept of like, are we going to just have consoles that don't use physical media? If so, yes. When is the other question? You know, like that, I don't know. Like, will it be the next generation? I now am of the philosophy Nintendo will probably do something physical again. And Sony, I think, is most likely to jump ship on physical first. At least in North America. Where it gets muddy for them is Japan, because in Japan, physical media is still preferred. And they are fundamentally a Japanese company, but basically they operate like they're not. It's very strange. So they're in a weird position where they want to appease their home crowd, but frankly, the fish are biting elsewhere as well. So I don't know with them. I don't know what exactly they might do a middle ground where it's basically an all download console, which is not physical, obviously, but maybe in Japan they'll sell like plastic cases with codes in them. I really don't know what their plan would be. And then Microsoft, I'm still of the philosophy they probably won't really try another piece of hardware. And they might make Xbox just a brand service that gets integrated into PCs more than anything else. That's still what I think. Obviously, I could be wrong, but that's what I think. Can you please do a video on the best picture quality out of the original Xbox? I have every intention of doing that, but now one of the problems that came with that is there's a couple of different Xbox HDMI cables that exist. And I want to try them, but I can tell just based on history and like the fact that they're the first round and frankly that they're so cheap that they're just like component pass-through cables, maybe a step above what like the PS2 to HDMI was. And I'd rather not waste my time just yet. I'd rather find something better. And I have a friend kind of working on something better, but it's, you know, eventually we'll see. I want to do it though. Don't get me wrong. Don't forget Europe and Australia sell physical media more as well. They do. They definitely do. But, you know, I mean, I could obviously be wrong about this, but I would bet you that more of PlayStation 4's revenue is coming from the US than the other markets combined. I obviously could be wrong, but I mean, if I'm a Sony executive, I'm sitting there like, fuck, like which crowd do I appease right now? Because as much as I love physical media and I only support physical media, there will come a time where the fact that physical media is still there, where it actually looks more as a hindrance than a positive. Like, oh, fuck, that thing's old. It has discs. I don't want that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's... Like, imagine it. This is a weird way to phrase this, but imagine if the Xbox One had launched with a cassette player attached. You'd be like, why does it have this old shit on it? Like, you just. I think there might come a time relatively soon where that might be the case. Depends on how much longer they can hold out. But I wouldn't be that surprised if PS5, as we're talking about it, is really PS 4.5. I know that's what the Pro is, or supposed to be. It might be a hair above the Xbox One X, is what I'm thinking. And it's called PS5 when really it shouldn't be, just to kind of get them over the hump. And that might use physical media still, and basically just be a PS4 on like max settings with extra, beefier hardware in it, but not being a true successor, like new generational leap. Then whatever PS6 is would be purely digital. That's just a guess, obviously. I heard the Pound HD link cable is pretty good, although I heard that they're faulty. Yeah, that's the Xbox cable I'm talking about. I hear a lot of mixed reviews of that thing. I haven't tried it, so I don't know. Any chance you'll be at the Portland Retro Game Expo this year? Yes, I will be there. I actually will be there. I'm actually being brought out there by Castlemania Games. So he was in here earlier. Thank him for that. How angry does the Poly Station make you? It doesn't. I just laugh at it. Those kind of clone consoles are, to me, funny. I feel bad for anyone who ever got saddled with one, though. That's unfortunate. Do you like any singing games like SingStar or We Sing? Nope. I have no musical talent or interest. Are you going to the Midwest Gaming Classic 2019? I had no plans to. It's Milwaukee, right? I've never been invited. I would do like a single day there if they ever reached out to me, but they've never done it. So, and it's weird because I know one of the guys who runs it, but like, there's just a disconnect there, I guess. Do you think Sega acquiring Atlas has been good or bad for both parties? I'll say good and leave it at that. I can't answer that question unbiased. I know way too much now. Behind the scenes stuff. So all I'll say is yes. Kyle Green super chats. He says, retro game you wish you would have gotten day one. Ooh. The obvious answer for something like that is just one of these like super expensive titles. Like stadium events. Like, of course, it'd be great if I'd walked into a store and bought that, at some point. I guess that I'm gonna go with that as my answer. Stadium events, because it'd be nice to have had that and then be able to sell it and buy a house. You know what I mean? Cheap house, admittedly. How about a nice car? If Sega was to re-release one of their old game consoles, what would it be? Well, they constantly license out Genesis clones, so I guess that's the most likely thing, at least for North America and Europe. Sega is weird because like a lot of their consoles have mixed results in different parts of the world. For example, the most successful console that Sega ever released in Japan was actually the Saturn. The one that like didn't do well pretty much anywhere else. It killed it over there. Absolutely killed it. So Sega of Japan, which calls the shots, would probably be like, yeah, maybe we should do a Saturn release. And then North America and Europe be scratching their head. And then retro gamers would be like, well, how come it only came out in Japan? What the fuck? I want this thing. And then meanwhile, Genesis / Mega Drive actually did very poorly in Japan. So it's like they're always in a weird spot like that. But I think that they just kind of do the whole Genesis clone thing because at this point in time, it's super fucking easy. And then they just kind of focus more on North America and Europe with it. Like I see them in Japan when I go there, but it's not the kind of prevalency that we get here. If you saw that the Sega Genesis Mini thing that's coming up, which was debuted at Sega Fest, that thing was pretty much created for the Western market. Like it will exist in Japan, but it was really meant to get American money. Can you go 1 hour without mentioning the NDA you signed? I could, but then I'd have to just straight up ignore all the people asking me questions that would violate the NDA. Cax117 Super Chat says, Atlas seems to be kicking ass with Persona. Yeah, I mean, people seem to be pretty happy with that. Um, obviously, you know, the assets that Sega picked up for Atlas from Atlas have been good for them, and the probably the best thing that's happened in that relationship is that basically Sega has let Atlas do its thing, and Atlas has just kind of given advice to Sega, and the two of them just kind of work cohesively and make each other money. Um, it's a positive relationship. And I like that about them. Like Sega didn't get overbearing and like just say like, all right, take the Atlas logo off of everything. We're putting the Sega logo in place of it. Like they recognize that what they picked up was the name and they want to use it. Are they still making cartridges games? I assume you mean for like the Genesis or whatever. The only place that would still be doing that is Brazil, but it's mostly just Master System down there. What do you think is my most obscure video? Oh, it's definitely something at the very beginning of the channel, like all the stuff right at the beginning, the stuff that's like sub 200 views that nobody's ever watched. That stuff. Is Sega making a comeback in the sense that they are trying to well, they're not making like a new console or anything like that. That's what you're talking about. They're trying to be better known for gaming than they have been in the last few years. So in that sense, yes, they're trying to appeal more to their actual like pre-existing fan base. Why does Big Lots still sell PS2 games? I don't know. I didn't even know that that was a thing. Why I haven't seen more short films? I'm assuming you mean the short films I made on this channel. Probably because people never really watched them, so there wasn't much demand to keep making them. They take a lot of work and time and effort and even money, and just it's not worth it. I mean, you just never make that back, and there's just no. One of the things you learn in like film school is you make short films to hone your craft, but there is no future in short films. You have to get out of that at some point, and I did. There's a bunch I made that are not up there, which maybe I'll upload those at some point. But I think the time for that might be over. Like I might be over it. Like it might be too weird for me to look back and be like, God, why am I uploading this? God, ugh, why did I do that? Is Shenmue 3 going to be a letdown? Honest opinion. I hope not. I try to keep my expectation low with that, and that's another reason I'm so patient about it. Is like, I want it to be good, obviously, and so when Yu Suzuki says we have to delay the game again, it's like, yeah, all right, go ahead, do it. Don't rush it out for my sake. Make your game and make it good, and hopefully it is good. It's about all I can hope for. You know what I mean? Like I don't have this expectation that it will blow my mind. I just want a logical, good follow up. That's all I'm aiming for. And I think that that's very reasonable. So I don't think I would be disappointed unless something really dumb happened in game, like, you know, Rio comes out of the cave and decides, you know what, I need a shotgun and we're just going to run around and like make a Grand Theft Auto clone. Then I'd be like, this is not what I wanted at all. Like then I would, yeah, then I would be like really disappointed. But no, I don't think, I'm not really worried about that. But at the same time, I don't expect this game to like mentally transport me to the moon. You know what I mean? Like it's just, I just don't expect it that. Cax117 Super Chaz, he says, do you think that it is cool that SNK, a former gaming hardware company, is making exclusive games for the last remaining game company who makes hardware? Are you referring to Nintendo? If so, yeah, I guess that's cool. It's kind of like saying, how do you feel about Sega making games for Nintendo? It's like, that's cool. um, my opinions might have been different when I was younger, but now it's like I'm at an age where it's like, no, it's just cool. Though, I mean, I know they're doing that like collection or whatever. What else is SNK making for Nintendo? I know they're doing that, like I said, that was it like the 30th anniversary collection or something like that? I want to get that. That'd be pretty cool. Thanks for the super chat, by the way. So if you guys want to do that at any point, I'll prioritize your question if you super chat or use PayPal. PayPal is frankly my preferred method. Information on that is in the description. Obviously very voluntary, but if you do it, I appreciate it. But if not, totally fine. Um, remember your old show called Bad Movie Theater? Yes, I do. That show was fun as hell to make. My buddy and I were kind of ahead of the curve on that about the method by which people would start reviewing movies. Uh, Although you will never know it based on the timestamps of the uploads because we kept getting shut down. We were putting it on YouTube and then it was shut down. Then we put it on YouTube again and it was shut down. We put it up on Blip TV and it was shut down. Ultimately, we put it on Vimeo, where they never cared because Vimeo is pointless, but they've never taken it down, so I'll give them that. But yeah, that show was a lot of fun to make. But we eventually just, after Blip TV canceled it, we were just like, okay, I guess we have no choice. We have to end this show. But it was a really fun movie review show. Nowadays, people do that kind of content constantly, and they're fine. We were too ahead. We were like scaring the industry. Now it's just accepted. Going to too many games. I'd love to, but I don't think so. I'm not flying anywhere tomorrow, but I am flying out. I don't think I'm allowed to say where just yet. On Tuesday. No. Wednesday. Wednesday morning. Microsoft releases Minecraft on Switch. When is Zelda coming to Xbox? Okay, so obviously he's making the reference that Microsoft owns the Mojang, right? Mojang. This is a company that made Minecraft originally. And I always kind of, when I first heard about that, I wondered the same thing. Like, once Microsoft got it, why were they still supporting it for multiplat? But then it occurred to me, Minecraft kind of broke that ceiling. It was too big. Part of the reason it was so successful is because it didn't have exclusivity. It was so big it could be on everything. So to their credit, Microsoft didn't fuck with that. They recognized that that's what made Minecraft work, and that's why they didn't screw it up, and that's why they're allowing it to be on other things. The flip side of that is I don't think Microsoft or Nintendo would ever put Zelda on an Xbox console, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of cooperation between those two soon. I talk about that more in my podcast. Obviously, I could be straight up wrong. It's a prediction that could be dead wrong, but just wait for the podcast. Am I going to buy Sonic Mania Plus? Yes, definitely. Do I think E3 is do or die for Xbox? No, I think they'll be around. At this point, it's kind of obvious to me, although I could be surprised, that the Xbox brand is probably on its way out as far as hardware goes. But that said, they want to make that brand valuable. And so they're trying to, I think, migrate it in a different direction, where the Xbox brand is all kind of one big thing, perhaps unified under PC. So, like I said, this year they have the most to surprise me possibly with. I have the most expectation or hope in them, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of don't really do anything that exciting. But to say that they're just like, nope, E3 went bad and they're not going to make anything anymore, I don't think that's going to be the case. At least not yet. Thoughts on Red Letter Media, if any? Yeah, I really like their content a lot. I've met Mike once at a film festival in Milwaukee like 10 years ago. That was like right after he did that Star Wars Phantom Menace 70-minute review. I met him one time, but other than that, I talked to him a few times online back then, but that's about it. At one point, he made an Avatar review, and he let me do a response video to it, which is no longer on the channel, but it was basically one of the mashup trailers were cool. And it was I still say it was a good video, and you can find it on the Vimeo as well. It's basically a fusion of Avatar and Pocahontas with footage of Pocahontas, audio of Avatar. It's pretty funny. Makes the point really well without saying a damn thing. And we also did response videos to his 70-minute Star Wars review and the episode 2 review he did, but not the episode 3 review because there was no communication anymore at that point. But back then we were doing it, and I could actually do a pretty decent Mr. Plinkett at the time. I don't think I could still do it. I haven't worked on it in years, but I think it was something like,
that bitch, she killed me. Oh, God, I'm gonna murder the prostitute.
something like that. I had honed it more back at the time. But yeah, I enjoy their content quite a bit. I watch a lot of Best of the Worst and the review, which actually is a fucking genius name for that show, by the way. And just in general, their movie reviews, provided that with the main ones, the half in the bag stuff, I really only watch the ones of movies I've seen or movies I definitely will not see. However, if you want a lot of insight into the problems with Sony Pictures that we talked about, that channel is good to watch. Specifically, the Jack and Jill episode that he did, the Adam Sandler one, as well as the Ghostbusters 2016 reviews. Not only the half in the bag one, but also the Mr. Plinkett Ghostbusters 2016. Watch those. You'll get a lot of information about why Sony as a film company fucking sucks. Best of the Worst guest. That'd be fun. I'd be totally down on that show, though. I mean, even though he met me once, there's no way he would remember me. Like, we had a brief encounter once a decade ago, talked a little bit like 8 years ago, and that was it. Like, there's no chance he would remember me at this point. Plus, I don't really do anything with indie film anymore, so like I wouldn't really be the most appropriate guest. I'm more tangentially connected to video games now. You used to not watch anime. Do you still not watch it? Correct, I do not watch it. You can't like everything, and to be honest, anime most of the time it literally is just the animation style just gives me fucking headaches. And it's kind of a nice thing to not like because there's so much content to it. It's so big. It's such a time consumption. And I can see why that would be really offensive to somebody who really likes it, but it's just there's too much shit in the world, man. You just can't like everything. And it's kind of nice when I frequent Japan and I just don't give a fuck about anime because it's like, oh good, none of that crap over there matters to me. I don't have to pay attention to any of it. It's relieving in a way. Do I remember the lactose intolerance video? Of course, I made it. Hikaru, why are you just like reminding me of all the videos I've made? It's like, it's kind of funny actually. I like that though. I appreciate that you've seen them. Thoughts on Best Buy Gamers Club Unlocked? We talked about that earlier. Long story short, lay sad. Lay sad. Do I watch foreign films? Yeah, but not with like any great prevalence. Actually, one of my favorite movies of all time is a German film called Downfall. Fucking love that movie. 2004. Should have won Best Picture. It was nominated for Best Foreign Film. It should have just won straight up Best Picture. It's fucking amazing. I know it doesn't exactly count, but Letters from Iwo Jima, which technically Clint Eastwood directed, and it was Warner Brothers, but it was really a Japanese movie just funded by the Americans. And yes, directed by Clint Eastwood. But it was a Japanese movie. It's fucking great. The Gojira, not the Americanized Godzilla King of the Monsters, but the actual Japanese film, fucking incredible. The American version's like, oh, let's throw Raymond Burr in there and have him react to stuff. That'll be cool. It's like, no, man, fuck that. The Japanese version is a fucking masterpiece. Watch that. Obviously Godzilla stuff in general, but that's a little different because eventually it devolves into just being for children and stuff. I mean, obviously there's more, but those are the ones that come off the top of my head. Oh yeah, you remember when nobody watched the Boner video because of the title? Yeah, that's funny. That's actually like that video got totally demonetized on this channel, by the way, which is funny because it's you obviously don't ever see a dick. The whole point is that you don't. So how does your friend who was lactose intolerant survive in my state of Wisconsin? Well, A, he doesn't live there. B, he's not actually lactose intolerant. And C, you don't have to eat cheese all the time. Letters from Iwo Jima was really good. That should have won Best Picture that year, too. Do you think they'll ever release Elder Scrolls 6? Of course. It's just a matter of time. It's not like they're... I got into a debate with somebody about this recently. Was about Like, maybe they'll have to re-release Skyrim some more because they haven't made enough money off of it. It's like, seriously, you think they haven't made enough money off Skyrim yet to justify a sequel? Do you really think there's anybody at Bethesda who's like, look, man, we'd love to do Skyrim or Elder Scrolls 6, but Skyrim just didn't quite make enough. It's like, what are you, nuts? Of course it made enough. It's one of the most successful games of all time. I'm not saying that's what you think. I'm just saying, yeah, it's inevitable. It's just a matter of when. My guess is they kind of reacted to a lot of the feedback they got from Fallout 4, and perhaps are going to just build it from the ground up rather than recycling an older engine, and that's going to make it take a lot longer. But I think that they want to do it right because they don't. Fallout 4 was very disappointing to a lot of people, and I think that they don't want to make that mistake with the Elder Scrolls, especially when the holdover was that Elder Scrolls Online thing, which obviously is not a main event, but at the same time, to a lot of people, that was the sequel in their mind. Like, you guys are gamers and you know a lot more about it. But we're talking to mass audiences, and when you burn them with a side project like that, you hurt the overall brand. So I think that they don't want to make another mistake. Let's put it that way. That's my guess, though. I will actually be at the Bethesda conference this year, so hopefully I get to see some cool shit there. Skyrim VR is awesome. We did a live stream of Skyrim VR just a few days ago, and my friend got so motion sick he almost threw up on the stream. Like, we actually had to stop. Like, we kept the stream going, and it was just the camera was just on him, and we all just, as an audience, just watched to see if he would throw up. It was pretty fun. Cax117 super chats. He says, "Who do you predict will win E3 out of the big three?" So I kind of talked about this earlier. Long story short, I think Nintendo is just going to bring the games and their own little quirky sense of humor, but I think they're going to show us a lot of what we already know, which is like, here's a lot of more Smash Brothers content, and here is some other games we're stealing from the Wii U that we're putting on here, and we're going to announce a new Mario Tennis or something like that. Not literally that one, but they're going to announce some other stuff. Maybe like, I think that Star Fox Racer thing that was talked about. Stuff like that. I don't think they're going to do anything that really blows our minds. I obviously could be wrong, but that's what I think. I think Sony is in the position of like, we're not going to rock the boat. Here's some more update trailers for things that are coming out. Here's some new announcements of things that you may or may not like. Here's some sort of updated trailer for this. But the only thing that would really shock me at a Sony conference right now would be if they really went ahead and announced PS5. That would shock me. But I don't expect them to rock the boat much. And then when it comes to Microsoft, it's not so much that I expect them to do anything that's going to surprise me, but of all three of them, I think they have the hardest to try, which means when you're in that losing position, you try harder. And so it wouldn't really surprise me if they tried hard to surprise me, if that makes sense. So one of my wild predictions from them was another Conquer game. I wouldn't be that shocked if we saw a new Conquer's game come from them. But again, I kind of talked about all this in my podcast, which is coming out next week. And if you're a Patreon backer, you can get it right now. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. Thank you very much for the super chat. We've got a PayPal donation from Richard Reeves Jr. who says, sorry, dude, I just said your name and apparently didn't want me to. Just shout out Splizzow. Need to get with you about the Wii U Skylanders for Eggs trade. Oh, the XEGS, the Atari XEGS. Yeah, sorry, dude. I'm never here, man. Send me another Twitter message and we'll talk about it from there. We'll figure this out at some point. Sorry, dude. Thank you, though, for the donation. Shenmue movie in the works. I can't imagine that's going to be a thing. I would love to make that movie, but that would be a lot of work. And, like, not legal because I don't own it. Sorry, I'm just reading stuff. Favorite TV show all time? I don't know. There's a lot up there. Seinfeld's up there. Simpsons is up there. Star Trek's up there. Lost is up there. There's so many great South Park's up there. There's a lot of great shows. Um, I don't know if there's anything really active right now that I'm super into. I kind of don't really watch much active television. I kind of wait for it to like end and then check back on it when it's over. Um, so yeah, I don't really have a great answer for that. Am I going to the Missouri Game Con? Oh, you mean the MomoCon in Atlanta? At one point, I got like a half offer to do that. Like, hey, do you want to come? Sure. All right, let me see what we can do. And then nothing ever came of it. So if that ever comes back around, then yeah, probably. But currently, there's no plan. Missouri Game Con, though, that's what MO Game Con would be. Yes, that I am going to. Top 5 arcade games. Shit. Let me think. Probably Simpsons Arcade, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Arcade, Jurassic Park Lost World. I don't know. I don't know what other two I could put in there. Maybe the X-Men arcade game. I don't know. I've played a bunch of them over time, but it's like it's hard to really narrow them down other than those like really obvious ones. I don't know. I don't have a great fifth answer. Sorry. So how are you guys doing? You having any fun? How long have we been going here? Uh, was it like 2 hours? So all right, here's the thing about the arcade stuff. I guess I was when it comes to my personal taste in arcade games, I tend to focus on ones that never got console ports or basically never got console ports. Like technically Simpsons Arcade never did except for the digital 361 which no longer exists. Stuff like that. Those are like rare exceptions, but I mean like Jurassic Park The Lost World, that's a great Virtua Cop clone because it was made by Sega and it never came out on the Saturn or anything, so you can only play it there. Stuff like that. But then you see something like people are mentioning, oh, how about Mortal Kombat or Metal Slug? It's like, while I don't deny that the arcade versions were probably better, they at least had console versions, so I never really tried them as much. So if that makes sense, that's why those are the ones I know better, is because the ones I was like, oh, I could never play this at all, so I have to play this now here at like Chuck E. Cheese or whatever the fuck. Same would go for the House of the Dead stuff. Granted, I don't deny the arcade experience would be better. I just didn't play it as much that way. Too many games. Like I keep saying, I'm probably not going. Why is Microsoft releasing so little exclusives, and the ones they do haven't been doing all that well critically? Sea of Thieves and State of Decay 2. Largely, it's because I believe that they're just trying to get out. They are not ultimately a game developer, and what they have is their policy straight up going into it is share everything with PC, which is a cannibalistic business practice for that actual console. But when you think of their long game as being, we're going to eventually transition into a brand that just exists as a Steam competitor, which is what I think they're doing, then their plan makes sense. So I think they're just kind of riding out the Xbox One while they're expected to, and then just move on from there. That's kind of what I think is their deal. And because they are so far in third place, there really is no coming back from that. I mean, you can get some great gaming experiences on the Xbox One, especially through the Xbox One X and all the perks and that come with that, like 360 backwards compatibility, OG backwards compatibility. There's a lot of great experiences to be had on the Xbox One, just not exclusive experiences, and that's probably not going to change. But then again, if there's a year to try and prove that wrong, this is that year. Saw a comment about, I don't even trust you to make the Shenmue movie, even though you'd be the best person. Oh, thank you. What's funny is I've actually thought a lot about how that movie would have to work. Now, of course, there's only 2 games to go off of. But, as weird as it might sound, this is where my film degree comes in, and and goes butt heads with my understanding of video game story structure, which is why I was able to do like the Back to the Future thing and the Jurassic Park thing, is that you need someone, I don't want to say like me, but there aren't too many examples, to be honest, of people who have a really good grasp of both of those type of structures and try to marry them. So what I've always thought with Shenmue, and I've thought about it, is it might sound weird, but all of the events of Shenmue 1, when you really boil it down, you couldn't spend more than 20 minutes of an actual film movie making that story. Because most of it, when you think about it for storytelling purposes, is kind of useless. It's a lot of character development, but not a lot of actual plot advancement. And then Shenmue 2 would be more involved in that story, but really would only contribute maybe another 20, 30 minutes of film screen time. And I say that knowing there was supposed to be more content, of course, but without knowing what that full story is, you can't really bring it all down into like a 2.5 hour narrative, which would be my goal. But if you're saying like, oh, take Shenmue 1 and turn that into a movie on its own, I don't think it would work. I just don't think there's enough narrative content that's interesting objectively as a viewer, but there is enough there as a player, which is two different experiences, which is a large part of the reason that video game movies tend to suck, is they don't have enough story content to work with. You think they do, because you play something like Metal Gear Solid and you're like, like it has this really interesting story. It's like, yeah, it does in chunks, but a good part of that is I got to run over here to do the thing, to run over there to do the thing, to run over there, which takes up most of your time. It's just you're kind of getting these little story fragments as you're going, and that's why you think it's more exciting than it actually is. But if you take the actual information that you get out of those time frames, it's just not enough. So yeah, that's my take on it. So I think, provided I had, some other films under my belt and I had, a budget and all that kind of stuff, I would love to do a Shenmue movie, but that doesn't exist. You need more content. You need a completed saga for that to be possible. Does that make sense? You guys following me on that? What do you really feel when playing bullet hell games? It depends on the game. Some of them I really enjoy. It's actually kind of tranquil and relaxing. Other ones, it's like I'm stressed the fuck out and I don't know what the fuck to do and I'm constantly dying. And other times it's just straight up boredom. It really depends on the game. Would you do a Ghostbusters, the video game, as Ghostbusters 3 movie like you did with Jurassic Park and Back to the Future? No, because it wouldn't work. I've gotten that question a bunch of times, and that's, again, where film degree butts with video games. You look at that game and you think, oh, all right, this basically was the third movie. There's a whole bunch of plot points and stuff and storyline elements, and it's interesting. You're following those characters. But again, a good chunk of that game, the way it makes progression in its story is to have a character running around going to a thing to do a thing to do a thing. And then just a couple of cutscenes holding it together. It's not like the Telltale stuff, which are largely basically interactive cutscenes. And even those have a bunch of runaround shit, so you have to like creatively glue them together so that you didn't have that problem. Ghostbusters, the game, it simply wouldn't work. I don't deny you could capture that footage and edit it down to something a gamer might watch, but something that I like to believe that a Jurassic Park fan who does not play video games can watch my Jurassic Park 1.5 and enjoy it. I like to believe that a Back to the Future fan who does not play video games can watch my Back to the Future 4 and 5 and still enjoy it. I don't think a Ghostbusters fan who does not play video games could sit down and watch anything you can make out of that game and enjoy it. I don't see the pieces. And I've played through it hoping to be wrong, but I don't see it being the case. I just don't think that there's enough material there. Unless maybe it was a very short film, and then it still wouldn't work because you'd still have big sections you can't explain that are missing. Because one of the rules I went into with that stuff is I don't want to be brought out of... One of the key things they try to teach you in any sort of film class is if you're making a story, your goal is always to keep the audience engaged in the story. You never want to do anything on screen that takes them out of the movie. And that can mean anything. Anything that breaks their suspension of disbelief. So, for example, if you're watching a cutscene in a video game or whatever, and you're kind of getting into the story, what immediately throws you out of it and back into the reality that you're playing a game is when the character goes from a cutscene to like, hey, there's your character standing there with the gun, just kind of like holding it. You're like, all right, I'm doing something now. I don't ever want the audience watching it to look at it and be like, I see there's a HUD on the screen. I see that I just see like, crosshairs. I see video game shit and this is bothering me. That's what I wouldn't want from a film audience. So that's why I really don't think the Ghostbusters one could work. That makes sense? From the Dreamcast indie scene, what's your favorite shmup? Stormwind, for sure. Favorite and least favorite controller on every generation. Oh, dude, that's a big question. Like that takes a lot of time to deduce, because I'd have to think about every console in every generation first. Sorry. So I don't have a stock answer for that. Current generation, I guess I like the PS4 controller the most, but previously maybe 360 was the best one in my opinion. Before that was either Xbox S controller or GameCube. I love the Dreamcast controller, but it was not the best one. I love it for games it was made for. I always feel weird having to defend it because people hate that controller, mostly because they got used to designs that came after it. It was in a weird historical place, but when you accept that games were built for that controller, work really well with it, then it's great. Never liked the Saturn controllers all that much. I always thought the N64 controller, but that might just be nostalgia. To be honest, I never liked the PlayStation controllers other than the PS4 controller. And then it just keeps going further back. I like the Genesis controller a lot, but SNES controller might be a little better. I don't know. That one's one day is a toss up, How many Dreamcast games do you think you've beaten? I don't know, dude. I never really kept track of that. A whole lot of them, but mostly just the American stuff. Most of the Japanese stuff, sadly, is unplayable. And with the exception of just a couple of the European stuff, none of it really, the European exclusives, I mean, not a whole lot of them really interested me all that much to actually like sit down and dedicate that much time to. I'm seeing more questions about Shenmue re-release that I'm not allowed to answer. Sorry. Why don't you like the Xbox One controller? I didn't say I didn't like it. You made that assumption because I said the PS4 one was my favorite. I like the Xbox One controller perfectly fine, but the question was which one was my favorite, and that one edges it out. Though I do like the improvements they made to the Xbox One controller lately with the rubber grips on the back. I mean, granted, that was a couple years ago, but the rubber grips on the back are very nice, and the additional like headphone jack on the bottom was all very good. But one of the things that still bugs me about the Xbox One controllers, even the latest version that I've acquired, which granted was like a year ago, still does that thing where it basically takes skin off of your fingers. You don't really notice it. It's not like it hurts or anything. But you look at the controller and it starts getting really dirty, like on the inside of the thumb ring, and you realize that's your skin. I'm not saying that's the reason. It's a factor. I think for longer gaming sessions, I've tended to prefer the way my hands feel at the end through a PS4 controller than an Xbox One controller. That said, I actually spend more time playing my Xbox One than I do my PS4. People joke, I'm assuming this was a joke, said Jaguar controller is my favorite. People fucking shit on that controller constantly, and most of the people who do have never held it. It's actually a very nice controller with a really cool concept on it. That keypad looking thing, everybody laughs at that. It's actually a smart idea because the idea was you would have these little like paper covers that go over it that would come with each game, and then each one would have different functions. So the example I've used in the past is like Alien versus Predator is on there. And rather than cycling through your weapons with A or B or C, it would just show all your weapons on the the paper thing. You just click that and then immediately jump to whichever gun you want. It was a neat concept, and it actually is quite a comfortable controller when you've got it in your hands. But everyone just looks at it and says like, "Oh, some YouTuber said it was bad," so I agree with that for some reason. I don't get that one because it's a pretty cool controller. We got a donation on PayPal from Robert Janos. What's up, man? Glad you're still watching. What is a game or series that everyone says that you'd love but never liked? Final Fantasy. And everyone says, "Oh, I should totally play that. You should get into that. You should be like really into that. It's Final Fantasy." It's like, yes, it is. I just don't really care because I just never liked RPGs all that much. And while I respect the accomplishment of those games, it's just not my thing. And like I said earlier with the whole anime thing, you can't like everything, man. And that's, to be honest, is a good one not to be like super into. But it's whatever. It's a good one not to be into because there's so many damn games in that series, and some of them are very expensive, and there's so much content to it. Just kind of a nice thing to be like, nah, I don't care. Is the Jaguar Pro controller real, or is it just a fan-made thing? It is a real thing. I do not own one, but it is definitely a real thing. What is the worst controller of all time? Either this is humble opinion of mine, Atari 5200. Not because the actual thing sucks to hold. I mean, that doesn't do it any favors. It does suck to hold. But the unreliability of it. Like, you plug it in and it never works. I've actually done a video on this, on how to restore it. Basically, Atari fucked up their mixtures of whatever, their chemical mixtures. And so their boards are basically these little bendable plastic, and they have connection points that oxidize and stop working after like 2 weeks. So you have to go in and clean them with either like Windex and a Q-tip, or some people use like rubber erasers. You basically just have to get that oxidization off there, and then the controller will start working again, provided there's nothing else wrong with it. But that really only lasts for a couple of weeks, and that's only if the analog stick isn't broken either. Which that is another separate common problem. So that controller, probably for that reason, just reliability. Now, as far as experience goes, I still have to say the Wiimote. I fucking hate that thing. And everything, all the bullshit we all had to endure in gaming for like 5 years because of it. I really hate that thing. What happened to the modern retro console that was based on the mold of the Jaguar? Well, there's a contradiction in there. The modern retro console. You're talking about the ill-fated Coleco Chameleon, which at one time was called the Retro VGS, I think. That whole project completely fell apart because it was just a couple of guys, I think, who had good intentions but had no idea what they were getting themselves into. And then they started trying to make it seem like they were further along than they really were, and they got caught doing it. I don't think there was really any hate in their plan. I think it was just they just were in over their heads, I think. And as a result, they just got completely fucked over and shitted on by the gaming community, which I don't say I blame the gaming community. They did ultimately get lied to. But in the end, I mean, no money was really spent, so the thing just faded into obscurity as a concept, which is too bad, because the idea of a retro console style machine that's getting support with physical editions of indies is a nice idea. But I said, even when this first came out, I did a video on it somewhere on this channel, where I didn't see any scenario where that could possibly work, because it was just, you're running into Nintendo's problem with the N64, which was cartridge production and how expensive it is and getting developers and all that stuff. But at the same time, you don't have the advantage Nintendo had, which was their name and their money and their own assets. So you're basically making a console that can't have any games. And it's probably for the best that it never actually came out. Red Calx Z super chats, thank you for that. Says, "Hey Adam, sorry I can't comment much. I'm at work, but are there any games you're looking forward to?" Well, there's always games I want to see. But at the moment, all eyes are kind of focused on E3 and just kind of seeing what the next big announcement is. Actually, you know what? There's another question that says, "Adam, can I see your shirt?" This is a 2-for-1. This is a game called Skull and Bones that Ubisoft has. I got to play this last year at E3. That'll actually be my answer because I legit want to see more of that game because I got to play that and it was fun as shit. So I want to see what kind of progress they've been making with that one. Obviously, I want to see more of just, a lot of the same stuff I think you guys do. And I'm also curious what that E3 leak that Walmart Canada put out, like how many of those are real? And like of those, which one? I think the one I'm most excited about would probably be Splinter Cell. Not, it wouldn't surprise me if that was real. But yeah, I'm definitely curious to check that out. So hopefully that answers your question. And thank you very much, Red Calx. Sorry, I'm not going to be at too many games this year, probably. I remember we met there. If you're going to AVGC, though, I will be at that for sure. What do I think of the Ouya? Yeah, I'm not surprised you failed. that was extraordinarily predictable. Would I like Valve to release Half-Life 3? Yes, just so even if I didn't play it or had anything to do with it, just so we could get rid of that fucking joke. But at the same time, in all seriousness, as a devout Shenmue fan who sat there fighting for years trying to get that game into production, I feel for the Half-Life fans who are in the same position. I want them to get Half-Life 3 because it'll make a lot of people really happy, hopefully. Most underrated console. So that's a difficult one too. It's kind of like that discussion we had earlier in the video about like what makes a game console good. It's because it's not a black and white. Here's a definite answer. I would say that of the main ones, I would go with the Sega Saturn is probably the most misunderstood game console that came out in the big ones that came out in the main regions. But then you look at ones that people mostly have never heard of, that are underrated for different reasons. I mentioned it before, but the Apple Pippin, I always defend that thing, even though I don't fucking like Apple. I think their products suck. I'm sorry, I do. In fact, the Apple Pippin is the only Apple piece of tech I even own. But I defend it because it was a well-made machine. It just got screwed by no software because they literally killed it off right as it was coming out. But it's a competent machine with no software. And so I think it historically gets a really bad rap for those who even know it because they're like, oh yeah, Apple made a game console, it sucked. It's like, no, it wasn't. That's not the story. And get it right. You know what I mean? And so I think that there's stuff like that in history that are more interesting to look at. Things like the Amiga CD32 that I find interesting for one reason or another. But if we're going the main consoles, I'd say the most underrated one, probably Sega Saturn. I would love to claim the Neo Geo is in that group, but it seems like that's not underrated. It's just not popular because it's too expensive to be popular. Why do I always wear two shirts? Oh, that's a simple tactic I got back in middle school. Basically, the undershirt, which is what this is, obviously I wear like deodorant, I'd shower every day and stuff, but you still sweat. And I would rather my t-shirts survive and shall we say, the sweat corrosion, if you will, that accumulates. You'll notice your armpits over time, shirts will develop holes if you wear them enough. But if you have an undershirt there as a buffer, the undershirt is the one that develops the holes, which who cares? Throw that away. Keep your nice, promo Skull and Bones shirt. At least that's my logic. Have I ever heard of Shenmue? Yeah, like once. It's about a whale, I think. Nothing wrong with Apple products themselves, just overpriced. I will highly dispute that. But why even go into that? I don't like how I did have an iPod and I didn't like how it was locked to a very specific PC. And if I wanted to connect it to anything else, it would have to be reformatted to be used again. I don't like all their I don't like the iPhone. I don't like how it's basically the smartphone in a helmet. I like all their stuff is proprietary. I fucking hate all that. So I will definitely dispute that claim. How well would a Dreamcast Mini and or Dreamcast re-release sell in 2018? Flop or success? I go flop. I don't think that could do well because the technology to emulate the Dreamcast is not cheap enough where they can make like a $20 little box that everyone just buys in droves. That's not going to be a thing. It's just not there. It would have to be more expensive, and then that comes with a higher expectation of quality, which could not exist. And then on top of that, you also need to have greater storage capacity because the nature of the games being bigger. Like it's not ready for the price point that people would want. And a re-release, LOL, like that's not happening. Like no, I'm sorry for the fact that I just said LOL out loud. I swear I never do that. I heard Shenmue has duck boats. It has duck racing and it has boats, but not necessarily duck boats. You know what's funny about that joke, the old Chip duck boat joke, for those who know? I literally was in Guam and multiple times duck boats drove past me, and I actually took photos and filmed it and sent him clips, and he said they were all photoshopped, and then I'd hired ILM to like digitally insert a fake like duck boat to drive down the street. It's just an ongoing joke that's amusing. But if you go to, I think it's, let me see if I'm correct on this. Everybody right now, if you're really bored, go to duckboat.org and you will see a website that Chip made just to further this joke. Am I going to watch the FIFA World Cup? No. So you hate Nintendo for the same reason you hate Apple. I like Nintendo, and I don't hate Apple. I just think they make shitty products, and I don't really like their policies, and I don't really enjoy any of their things. Whereas Nintendo, while they... I mean, that's... all game consoles are essentially proprietary. That's like the nature of it. But at the same time, you have some sense of competition. With the iPhone or whatever, you're very locked for no real reason. When all of your competitors do the same thing for cheaper and they do more of it. Like, people were asking earlier, what phone am I still rocking? I'm rocking the Google Pixel XL. Not only does this do everything the iPhone does, but it does it infinitely better. And it has more capabilities that they do not, for no apparent reason. Like, I can use this as a portable hard drive if I want to, whereas the iPhone, definitely, unless they've changed that, you really can't do that. I just don't like the proprietary nature of all of Apple's products. But that's also because they're intended for various household use. I don't expect anything out of Nintendo products other than gaming. I don't expect my Switch to be able to do anything else. I do expect my phone to do multiple things. And what I don't like is when the iPhone or something like that tells me I can't just because they don't want me to. Does that make any sense? I can see why that looks similar. But again, one is a dedicated gaming device. The other is supposed to be a computer in your pocket. Favorite band? I really don't like music that much, and my answer for this is always kind of laughable because I mostly like classical. So my stock answer for this is actually John Williams and the London Symphony Orchestra. Music for movies. Yes. I take it some people went to duckboat.org. What's Guam like? Do they sell games? If you go to GameStop, yes. Guam is a little known piece of American soil, and I say that because it seems that most Americans don't know it's ours. It's been ours for a very long time. Since the end of the Spanish-American War, we've had it. Except for a brief, when the Japanese took it briefly in World War II and we took it back. It is the United States of America. It's our soil, we own it straight up. It could be a state one day. It just currently is not. It's basically just, it's kind of poor man's Hawaii, but I say that not as an insult, but as a good thing, because there's not that many people there. The population's like 130,000 people. We went to a hotel where I was expecting a whole bunch of tourists because they said, it is tourist season. There was nobody there, dude. And like, I had a whole beach to myself. I had a pool to myself. It was fucking great. And I don't say that as like, this is some ritzy thing I got to do. I was not in a particularly amazing place. There's just not any people. It was great. I found my beach. Mostly the island is a U.S. naval post, an Air Force post. So that a lot of the stuff is military. So, and of course you get a lot of the cool local things, which I liked a lot because there's a lot of that's a section of American culture I've never got to experience before, because it was the first time I was on a new piece of American soil since I was 13. What I mean by that is, by the time I was 13, I had been to all 50 states. all 50. The United States has 5 territories on top of that. It has Puerto Rico, it has Guam, it has the Northern Mariana Islands, it has the U.S. Virgin Islands, and it has American Samoa. So there's 5 territories. I'd never been to any of those. Plus, it has a whole bunch of atolls and islands that nobody lives on, but I've never been to any of those. Very few ever would. But I'd never been to any of those territories. So Guam was the first time I was on a new piece of American soil since then. And that was a weird experience. Going through customs there was very different. And yet, as an American who has like global entry and stuff, it really wasn't that hard because you just scan right through. And I don't know, man, it was fun. And the ultimate thing, this is funny though, there, like I said, there, you go to any kind of place and you want to try all the local things. So there, anything that's considered a local dish is usually the term they throw on it is the term chamorro, which is kind of the title for the local culture. And I say that with a very ignorant perspective. I don't know a whole lot about the actual indigenous history of Guam, so I apologize if I'm offending anybody, but I'm trying not to. Hafa a day, have a good day. But one of the best things I had there was the chamorro burger at this place called The Grill. I know, a great name, next to the Santa Fe Hotel. If you're ever in Guam, get that fucking burger. It was amazing. I went there like 5 times. It was unreal. I loved that burger. But being on Guam, I guess if you ever decided to go there, there's only a couple of real tips I can give you. One, you need a car, or you have to rely entirely on either taxis or the equivalent of Uber. They don't have Uber, the app specifically. They don't have Lyft. They have their own thing called Stroll, Stroll, Guam, Stroll Guam. You want that app. Tipping is not only encouraged, it's highly expected, which is very annoying there. Things are relatively expensive, which is unfortunate. But you really just, in my opinion, you go there just to kind of try the local food and just kind of have your beach, unless you have anything tangentially connected to military reasons to be there, because that or you just want to get away from people. That's the only thing, in my opinion, to do. I could obviously be wrong about that. I mean, everybody has their reasons for going to different places, but that was my take on it. But I had a really good time there. And I'd never thought I'd say this, but I'd really love to go back there. The other thing I got to do was I got to briefly hop up to Saipan, which is the biggest city in the Northern Mariana Islands. Saipan's thing is kind of like Japan invaded us once during World War II, so we have a whole bunch of relics and stuff that are just there. I got to see a whole bunch of those before bouncing back to Guam. So now I've been to 2 of the territories out of the 5, which was pretty sweet. Guam's thing is weird because strangely what you'll see there, and I learned this from a buddy of mine, was that tourist season for them doesn't mean Americans. It means mostly different Asians. Lots of Japanese people go there, lots of Chinese people go there, lots of Filipino people go there. And the reason is simple. A lot of people, and I know more about this from the Japanese perspective because this is where I learned this, was that in Japan, a lot of people have this idea of like, oh, let's go to America. We want to see America, or we want to do American things. But America's really far away, and it's really expensive to get there. And you know what? Fuck that. Guam's right there. Guam's America. Let's go there. So when you go to Guam, Guam sets itself up like, hey, we're America. We have beef, and we have gun ranges. Come on out. And it's only a 3-hour flight from Japan. That's kind of their thing. So it's weird. They cater a lot to Japanese tourists. In a weird way, and I hope this doesn't sound awful, in a weird way, Guam is kind of like an alternate reality where Japan won World War II and America didn't. And we still have it, but it's kind of like, their influence is way more obvious because everything's kind of dual language with English and Japanese. It's strange, but it's definitely very cool, and I really would like to go back there. Yeah, so if that helps answer any of your questions, and if you're ever there, 100%, go get yourself a chamorro burger. Do it. What do you know about Bermuda? I know it's part of the former British Empire. I don't know if it's still under the UK specifically, but I think it is technically part of British rule still, or at least in the Commonwealth realm. It's not American, that much I can tell you. are my thoughts of the Nintendo Online? Are you talking about like Nintendo's capacity to play Switch games online? What was your first job? I was a cashier at a grocery store. Actually, that's not my first job. My first job when I was a kid, I mean, excluding stupid things like, oh, I sold lemonade or whatever, I worked at a framing store where they would frame pictures and things like that and collectible items. But as a side job, they also sold basketball cards. Now, at the time, in Chicago especially, basketball, Michael Jordan, all that shit, it was super hot. And basketball cards still had relevance. So I was super into that at the time. And so the store actually would hired me in a sense. I obviously wasn't literally legally working for them. Well, I had my mother's consent, but basically if a kid came in and wanted to like buy a pack of basketball cards, like I would deal with that at the register. And if they wanted coffee, I'd go out to Starbucks and get them one or whatever. And they would pay me in like basketball cards and like signed merchandise and stuff like that. You know, like if you count that, that was my first job. And of course, if anybody came in like, oh, I want to buy like a big, framed thing or whatever, then I got the hell out of the way and said, hey guys, there's like a real customer here. That, if you count that, sure. Super hot like my mom. Yeah, sure, man. Thanks. I appreciate that. I'll let her know. I am. All right. So the question is: are you somehow related to the U.S. military? Were you visiting military base on Guam? I have. Let's just say I have connections. I am not myself in the military in any capacity, nor would I claim to be. Though I have, through connections, had access to military moments, if you want to call it that. I got to do, like for example, one time I went to Japan. I got to go to the American side of the Yokosuka Naval Base. For those who don't know, Yokosuka, which is where Shenmue 1 takes place, I swear it was just a coincidence. I got to go to Yokosuka, hang around on the Japanese side, but one time I got to go over to the American side. And the American side is, it's basically our country over there. It's little mini America. There's a border fence, all that stuff. And, all of a sudden everything's totally different. Like everything's fully in English. There's every like American fast food chain you can think of. Even the power outlets are the American style outlets. Like it's ours. It's the spoils of World War II basically. So I got to hang out over there. That's the most military access thing I've had that at least I can say. So but to answer your question specifically, no, I didn't do anything military related in Guam. No. And no, I'm certainly myself not military. So are you cheering for whoever gets the Cavs to win the NBA Finals? Um, I'm still hoping it's Houston Rockets versus Boston Celtics with a slight more interest in the Houston Rockets winning. That's what I want to see of the choices I've got. Do you know anything about the Sears in television? I just picked up one for $30 and I know nothing about it. From what I recall, it was pretty common practice at the time for distributors like Sears to just put their own brand on popular game consoles. Like Sears Telegames put their name all over the Atari 2600. It's just a variant. I think the Intellivision one would be a tad less common, but that doesn't necessarily make it valuable. Like for the Atari ones are common as hell. Chicago Bears or Green Bay Packers. I'm in Chicago, so I guess I'm forced to say Bears, but I fully acknowledge the Green Bay Packers are a much better team. I mean, I've never cared about that rivalry because honestly, I don't give a shit about hand egg. That's a sport that bores the fuck out of me. But like I would love to see the Bears win, even though I would never watch it. Like for the city's civic pride, I would be like, oh, good, the Bears won, because that's the only team in Chicago that has not won in my lifetime. But when I first understood there was this rivalry, I was like, man, I bet it's like every year, it's like they're both just as good, and like they must be like winning every time, and like and one wins, the other wins. It must be this huge rivalry based on like a common talent level. Then when I found out like the Green Bay Packers are just like infinitely fucking better than the Bears, who just historically, with the exception of 1985, fucking suck. It's like, I love my city, but dude, calm down. The Bears suck. You want to have a good rivalry, actually win some fucking games. How did I like Australia? I liked it a lot. I talked more about it in some videos I already did if you want to see some pickups. And mostly down there, what I got was a lot of random Blu-ray releases because they got a lot of movies down there physically that we never got. Do I have a working Panasonic Q? Yes, I do. What do I think about the Sega CD? I like it quite a bit as a concept, and I always thought it could have done really well if it had really owned its actual advances and not relied so much on FMV technology. I've said this before where like FMV was meant to be a bonus feature. Like it was supposed to be something, I think like Mortal Kombat was the example I've cited before, where Mortal Kombat, what they did with that game is they basically took the Genesis one, they gave it better music and they added some visual cutscenes through FMVs and just gave you a more enhanced experience by using the additional benefits that the Sega CD had. Then you get into horse shit like Night Trap, which decided we're just going to make a game with this. Now, Night Trap's maybe not the best example because it's the most infamous one. So people at least have some nostalgia for it. But like you take Double Switch or Corpse Killer, any of the games that were way too demanding on the need for FMV. And I just go, that's what fucking killed that platform, is that you didn't take advantage of that technology. You abused it into the point where it just became associated as being a gimmick. And that was a mistake. Not to mention, price point certainly didn't help. You know, I'm sure there was other factors, but that historically speaking is kind of the way I look at it. Is like if you hadn't abused the FMV feature, you might have had a better platform. Do I have any siblings? I have a sister. Do I have any female groupies or stalkers? I have a girlfriend cooking dinner in the other room. Does that count? Besides the Obi-Wan movie, what would you like as a side story? I'm assuming this is specifically about Star Wars. I would kind of like to see the other version of Rogue One, the one in which they basically steal the Death Star plans for the second Death Star. I know that's a bit limited in thinking. I would really like to see the Dash Rendar movie. I think that would be really cool to make. Like, you know, basically Shadows of the Empire, the N64 game. That was a game, but it was also a novel. It was a comic. It was a toy line. Like that was essentially a movie without the movie. Let's make that movie. You know, like I want to see that. Make the Shadows of the Empire film. I think that would be a really good storyline. Not literally just based on the game. The game is an adaptation with some content. I mean, like really go into it and do it right. Girlfriends only count as siblings if you're in Star Wars. I mean, that's two different questions combined for some reason right there, buddy. Does your mom love you? Not as much as your mom loves me. Oh! High school burn. Yes, Mrs. Claus. Hey, there's Scott the Canadian, everybody. Say hi to Scott the Canadian. Where the fuck have you been, you nerd? Welcome back. Of course, this isn't where you parked your car, Scott. This is a chat. Canadians are very silly. Do you ever get contacted by companies to review cheap Android emulation gaming tablets? Yes. I do not review things that I have no interest in. And you know what? I'm gonna use right here. Castlemania Games is in the chat. This is a great guy who sends me stuff to review. He has openly, and he would not deny this, I'm sure, has asked me about multiple times, not cheap Android tablets or whatever, but every once in a while he'll be like, hey, I got these things. Do any of these interest you? And I say like, no, not that or that for this reason. And it's just because I'm not going to review stuff just for the sake of making a video. I'm not going to review stuff just for the sake of getting stuff. I want to review things that I have an interest in. Because if I'm just like, hey guys, they sent me this like tablet, it's got Sonic 2 on it. I guess it's okay. Whatever, free tablet. Like, that's not a video. Who the fuck wants to watch that? I don't want to make that. You don't want to see that. So I want to do stuff that's exciting, you know, and there you go. So I will give a bad review if the thing I was expecting sucks. But I'll obviously give it a positive review when it's good. So like, for example, he messaged me about the GameCube HD, the HDMI adapter. And he's like, do you have any interest in this? I was like, yeah, that does. That's something that fits with me. It makes sense for me. I make videos about that kind of thing all the time, and that genuinely excites me. Then I made the video, and I said, here are the faults I have with it. Here are the things I like about it. You guys, now you have that information. Do what you want with it. But other things that reviewers or not, he's not a reviewer, but people who ask me about stuff like that, like, hey, do you want to do this? No. if it's something I want, sure, I want to talk about, sure, but you get it. Scott the Canadian says, where is Mrs. Claus? Tell her she needs to make sure you're free. She's in the other room, dude. She's cooking dinner. He says that he has to keep me free in June because he wants to come down to Chicago to hang out. If I'm here, dude. All right, Almada Warrior gets a shout out for saying, don't tell me what I like, Adam. That was... I don't know why, I just found that funny. Any thoughts on Mike Matei? I've met him a couple of times, but I don't know him personally. I've just seen him at too many games, like twice. And he's a friend of Shane Rerez, and I'm a friend of Shane. So like mostly it's been like communication through that, but it was never like, hey, I know your work. Hey, I know your work. It was there's no direct conversation. It was just more like I'm standing next to him while he's talking to Shane. Does that make sense? And through that, I can't give you any sort of assessment of his personality, like behind the camera, because I don't know it. Other than he seems very friendly. What do you think about the Sega Smash Pack Volume 1 for the Dreamcast? Obviously, now it has basically no point because there's plenty of other ways to play Genesis games. I think actually the most valuable part of that is the fact that Virtual Cop 2 is in there, which got a standalone physical release in Japan for the Dreamcast, but that was the only way to get it on the Dreamcast here. And then the other, 11 games are all Genesis games. I always felt like they didn't put nearly enough Genesis games on there. Funny thing about that collection, though, is back when Dreamcast emulators mattered more. I mean, emulators for the Dreamcast, so like playing Super Nintendo or Genesis games on your Dreamcast. When that was a bigger deal, a lot of people actually used that particular build from Sega ages to run other Genesis games. And as you are no doubt surprised to know, Genesis games are very small. And even a CDR, which would be a 700 megabyte capacity, 800 megabyte overburn, could hold a lot of fucking games, like half the library. So my point is, a 1 gigabyte disc by Sega themselves could have no doubt held more. So I guess what I was always surprised by was why they only put 11 games on there, because they definitely could have done more. But you have to ask who's ever publishing it at the time. I mean, obviously it's always Sega, but I mean, like, Sega's not an entity, it's individual people. So whoever made that decision at the time, like, why only 11 Genesis games? Why not like 50? Like, what's stopping you other than licensing? You made a bunch of your own games. What's stopping that? Other than maybe just like, they didn't want to sit there and bug test like every single one of them. I don't know. Am I going to E3? Yes, I am. Am I excited about it? Yeah, of course. I look like a country porn star on crack. That's awesome. Thank you, man. I'm glad you think I can be in porn. I appreciate that, really. That means a lot. What's the rarest game I own? God, I wish I had a standard answer for that at this point, because that comes up a lot. I don't know, man. Like, it's not so much rare games I collect as it is, like, I try to collect more of the rarer hardware. The rarer games are, like, usually too expensive to be all that worth it. I mean, and rare with video games is, at least games themselves, is a very flimsy term. Because some people say Earthbound is rare. Earthbound is not rare. It's just expensive because it's high in demand. Yet you look at eBay, you can find it everywhere. Rare to me means like some weird fucking thing that most people don't even know is real. And unfortunately, most of the time, those type of games aren't very good. They're like prototype cartridges or something like Air Raid 2 for the Atari 2600, which I certainly would never own. I don't know if I have a very standard answer for that one. Any Bethesda E3 predictions? I kind of talked about this before. I think the most obvious one to me, other than the things that have leaked, so let's not count those, are things like a Fallout collection with Fallout 3 and New Vegas, something like that. Oh, I'm glad you're here, Hikaru, because you made a very good point. The rarest game that Adam owns is the Gara no Torikagu Capital series for the Dreamcast. That's probably accurate. There is a series on the Dreamcast called Grauen no Torikagu Capital. Well, capital means numbers, but Grauen no Torikagu, that's the name of the series. And then Capital 1 through Capital 6. So number 1 through number 6. I believe capital's German for number, correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe the first one was released publicly, and then after that, they were only sold through like Sega Direct. And the last one, number 6, only came out through Sega Direct at the end of the lifespan, and something like 200 copies were ever shipped. Sega Direct is kind of the equivalent of Sega's version of Club Nintendo in Japan. It is very rare. I do have it, but it's so rare that when I was at Sega Fest in Tokyo, I went up to they had this section where they were like doing the 30th anniversary of Mega Drive and the 20th anniversary of Dreamcast. And they had these big sections set up with all these different games that came out on both. Oh, Capital's Chapter, sorry. They had these big sections set up with games. And I was actually telling the dudes I was hanging out with from Sega, I'm like explaining the story I just told you about the games, because we saw the first one. And I kept going down the timeline looking for all of them. I found 1, I found 2, I found 3, I found 4, I found 5. And then I got to where number 6 should be and it just wasn't there. The reason it wasn't there is there's only like 200 copies that game ever made. And even Sega apparently didn't have one. Which says a lot. So yeah, that's a thing. Unless I couldn't find it in their setup, but we looked. We found all the others. Do you think they will ever find the true burial site for the ET games? Okay, so that's a really good story, Nate. I'm glad you brought that up. I want to give a shout out. I mean, he doesn't need help from me, but Norm Gaming Historian did a video about this a long time ago, and he deserves way more recognition for it. So very infamously, as I'm sure a lot of you know, when the Atari 2600 went bust, one thing they buried was a ton of ET unsold cartridges and Pac-Man unsold cartridges. Like the AVGN did a whole movie based around that concept, and it's a thing that happened, but nobody knows where they put it, at least officially. Now, Microsoft, in an effort, after they fucked up with the whole Xbox One DRM thing and they were trying to restore their brand, they actually funded, of all things, a documentary and a dig site out to where they believed it was, and they dug it up, and then they're like, hey, we found it, this is it. They were doing that to like restore some gaming credibility. But the thing they found wasn't actually the most infamous version. It was actually a very publicly well-known site. There's 2 sites. One was just a small warehouse had leftover inventory they were ordered to get rid of, and they went through the state, they publicly declared where it was going, and they put it there, and that information was in public records, and Microsoft simply got information of where it was and got consent from the state to go dig it up. That was it. Norm did a whole video about it. But the very infamous one, wherever that is, that information is sitting somewhere and nobody knows exactly where. So Microsoft has not found that one. Nobody has. It could eventually be like the Jimmy Hoffa body. Like nobody knows where the fuck that is. Like, who knows? Do you think Nintendo will add achievements or trophies to the Switch, and would you care? There's a time where I really would have cared. Now I just don't. I stopped caring about achievements and trophies a long time ago. I don't think I ever cared about trophies. I think I cared about achievements when that was right on at the beginning. And for a couple of years there, I really cared. And then I just kind of stopped because I was like, I don't know. I just lost interest in it. It's just part of getting older. But if they added that now, I'd be like, that's great. It's cool. Call them awards or whatever coins is probably what they would call them. Something like that. And I would just be like, that's cool. Does it have any benefit? No, not really. My e-penis is bigger than the other person's e-penis. That's great. I don't care. And to answer the question of do I think they will do it? Probably not. I think that while achievements and trophies are still cool to people, I could be wrong, but I don't think they have quite the same like difference as they used to. I mean, there was a time before Sony added trophies that people were picking up 360 games specifically for achievements, as opposed to PS4 or PS3 not having trophies. They're like, well, I have both platforms, but like I want to get the achievements. Why? I don't know, but I was in that group too. And as Hikaru points out, Ground no Torikagu Capital is unplayable today because it requires an internet connection and Dreamcast servers are dead. Yeah, that's the other thing. It's not even really a game. It was like an online interactive like visual novel with cutscenes, and you needed to be online to do it. And yeah, so it's just a coaster these days. So close to 100,000 subs. Congrats. Thank you. Hoping that happens relatively soon. What Dead series would you like to see reboot? Return. My vote is Parasite Eve. Oh fuck. Why can't I remember it? Well, I guess I'm gonna go with Conquer. That was not my initial. It's like I'm spacing on it. I know there was one I always want back, but I'm spacing on it right now. So just so I don't sit here and just be silent for like 5 minutes trying to think of it, I'm gonna say Conquer's Bad Fur Day. I'd love to see like a real true return to that, not not a remake, not a digital re-release, anything. I want to see another one. The argument I made about that possibility is that I think there's a small chance that Microsoft might do that this year, might announce a new Conquer. The reasons I think that, and these are very speculative, and I talk about it on my podcast, but I'll talk about it now again. One, they put out Rare Replay. I think that was the first kind of let's see how this goes type of thing. And Conquer was a very valuable part of that collection. Two, they put out Super Lucky Tale, which a lot of people thought of as Conquer initially. I know when I first saw that trailer, I was like, oh, this is a new Conquer game. Oh, no, it's some like little kids game. And so just to kind of warm that up. And then finally, in the latest round of OG Xbox backwards compatibility updates, you have Conquer Live and Reloaded available. So in a weird way, they've kind of been warming up the audience for Conquer a bit. And if you think about it, the Xbox One is now the ultimate place to play Conquer because you have both Conquer's Bad Fur Day for N64 and OG Xbox on the same machine, which is pretty neat. So if they want a special, exclusive title, exclusive meaning here and also on PC, I guess, Conquer is a good IP to do. It's got a lot of nostalgia to it. You own the shit out of it. You could make that happen, and you can make a lot of people happy doing it. Has my Portuguese improved at all? No, because I'm not practicing it. My girlfriend doesn't give a shit if I speak Portuguese. She's very much encouraging, like, just who gives a shit, English. Any unreleased Dreamcast game you'd like to see a prototype leaked of? Any of them. Anything that exists, leak it. I don't think there's anywhere I was like, holy shit, where's that? I know at some point there was a playable build of Gun Valkyrie. So maybe that. If there was at some point a Dreamcast version of Shenmue 3 in development, which there probably was, that. But I don't know. I don't even know what's real and what isn't as far as that's concerned. Because some stuff like that no one ever thought was real, like for example, Dear Avenger 3, I actually got to do a video on, and that's great. So we got to try that. We collectively, I guess. Trust me when I say there's nothing really to play to that. You guys saw it in the video. And then there's ones on that list where you're like, oh, cool, I bet that's somewhere, but no, it's not. There's no evidence that it was ever actually real. So it's hard to say. I guess I might just go Gun Valkyrie because we know that was real. I know one of the Castlevania games was very close to release. Maybe that too. How about Saturn unreleased games you want to see? Oh, I'd love to play the crap out of that Shenmue version. For those who don't know, Shenmue was originally developed for the Sega Saturn and was actually near completion for the Sega Saturn, but ultimately axed and moved over to the Dreamcast and basically built from the ground up again because of the fact that Sega was moving on. So somewhere in the world there exists a nearly finished build of Shenmue for the Saturn. And if you've seen the videos of it, you realize it was not only really ambitious. I mean, it was visually amazing for the Saturn, but it actually pretty much went all the way to Shenmue 2. It was kind of like the whole thing. There's scenes of like Ren and you running around. It's kind of amazing. That said, I would bet you it was a much more abridged version. Resident Evil 0 on N64. I'd like to play Resident Evil 2 on Saturn. That was a thing as well at one point. I saw somebody talk about that recently where they were kind of like, yeah, why didn't that ever happen? Like, you know, because it was in development. They even released like the cover art and everything for Resident Evil 2 for Saturn. I get why it never came out in North America, but as an adult, I later revisited that same line. When I first heard about that as a kid, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I guess that makes sense because Saturn was a flop, right? But now as an adult, I realized that Saturn was like stupid successful in Japan. So I don't know why Resident Evil 2 or Biohazard 2 never got a release on the Saturn in Japan. Maybe there was some sort of temporary Sony exclusivity deal, but beyond that, I don't know. Maybe it would have been just too hard to develop the assets. I don't know. Saturn was a pain in the ass to work with. Did you watch The Office? I've seen both the American and the British version. Heresy, I like the American version a lot better than the British version. Hey, Julian, what's up? Any obscure games you feel more people should know about and play aside from Shenmue? Shenmue is hard to call obscure these days, just because it's had so much public attention. But then again, maybe my perception of that is a little warped. I'll give you that. Um, a lot of horror games, especially like PS2 ones, like Rule of Rose. I mean, a lot. The problem with this is that a lot of us know this stuff already. Um, but I think to get into a wider release, I'd love to see games like Rule of Rose or Haunting Ground get re-releases so more people can try them. Are there any differences between the Dreamcast and GameCube versions of Resident Evil 2? Other than controller layout, not really. I remember reading at the time when they were releasing the GameCube versions of those, that they literally just showed the Dreamcast ones, and the article straight up said they were just straight porting it. They weren't doing anything special with it. In fact, I think they run at a lower resolution. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. I know the Dreamcast versions of Resident Evil 2, Code Veronica, and 3 run via VGA, and I think the GameCube version of Code Veronica does, but I think 2 and 3 do not support the progressive scan modes, so they might actually not look as good. It's not like the Resident Evil remakes, which funny enough also don't support progressive scan. Somebody who owns those, correct me on that. It's like a vague memory. Favorite OG Xbox game, excluding Shenmue 2, I gotta go Star Wars Battlefront 2, which now, funny enough, I can play on my Xbox One. Have I tried the garlic white cheddar at McDonald's? No. I don't really eat at McDonald's, to be honest with you. Maybe Sega will stick the Saturn prototype on the Shenmue collection. Good luck with that. I want to see the unreleased Sonic for Saturn with Sonic Extreme. There was a release of some kind for that, some sort of beta. But from what I remember, it was incredibly limited. Like you could basically just run from one side of a map to the other, and it's not even as good as that sounds. But I think there was some fan effort to like do a lot more restoration on it. And I was kind of following that project for a while, but I don't know whatever happened with that. Every Resident Evil is 480p on the GameCube. That is not accurate, sir. Stick in Resident Evil 1 and try running it in progressive scan. It will absolutely not work. Same with Resident Evil 0. What are the differences between the OG Xbox and Dreamcast versions of Shenmue? The most obvious one is that the English dubbing only exists in the Xbox version. The Dreamcast version only has the Japanese audio, which, to be honest, I prefer. I'm a little surprised the Xbox version didn't have dual language support, but it doesn't. The Xbox version only has one disc as opposed to four, so you don't have to do any disc swapping, and load times are better. There are minor visual improvements of the Xbox version, and load times are better. But overall, the Dreamcast version also gives you the save transfer feature, and due to that, you're allowed to do things like level up Rio's fighting skills in the first game and then use them in the second, whereas when you start the second on Xbox, regardless, you have to start with the stock vanilla version of him, which is not really your version of him. Nor do you have your items or your history or the choices you made in the first game that affect the second game, stuff like that. And the controller scheme, to me, always played better on the Dreamcast, plus the additional benefits of playing through the VMU. But yeah, it's I always go Dreamcast, but it's not like I don't see the benefits of the Xbox version. Adam, talk to your peeps about getting Burnout 3 Takedown added to backwards compatibility. Microsoft is kicking us on BC and 4K updates. Do I have peeps at Microsoft that I don't know about? Who are they? Tell me. Dude, you want peeps at Microsoft, the person you should be talking to is Shane, not me. Resident Evil 4 is progressive scan on GameCube. That's it for Resident Evil. See, that doesn't surprise me because that one was built from the ground up for the GameCube. But then again, wasn't the remake of Resident Evil 1, but that one definitely doesn't support it. Code Veronica X is 480p too. See, so that would fit with what I said, where I thought only 2 and 3 would only support 480i, whereas the Dreamcast versions have 480p. Would you want to see another Back to the Future game from Telltale? I have a weird yes and no to that. The yes, of course, is I'd love to see the game. I'd love to see the story and see where they go with it and all that stuff. The no to that would be then I would be under incredible pressure to actually like make another movie out of that or even 2 movies out of that. And oh my God, these days I don't know if I could ever get around to finding the time to do it. So yes and no. What game series would you like to see die? I don't know if there's anywhere I'm just like, oh fuck, stop making that. Because with any game series I really don't like, I just don't support it. I can't think of anything where it just annoys the shit out of me. Like there's a lot of game franchises I don't care about. But I can't think of anywhere I'm just like, this just has to go away forever. There's definitely ones I wish would take a break so that they could like calm down, come up with some fresher ideas and bring them back. That's a different thing though. There's a difference between making a series of games I don't give a shit about, like the NBA games. Like I love the NBA, but I don't give a fuck about playing their games. And I expect that every year. But then there's games like, say, Call of Duty or something like that, where I enjoyed that quite a bit at one time, and it just kept getting so done to the point where you're like, I don't want to keep up with this anymore. It goes from like, this was cool because I enjoyed the gameplay in combination with the history tied to it and all that, to like, I'm shooting stuff in space. How did we get to this point? You know what I mean? Those type of franchises, and let's just say Call of Duty is one of them, I would be totally fine with them taking a break, but to have them like go away forever, no, certainly not. Man, you just sold Shenmue 1 and 2 for Dreamcast. Did I? How did I do that? Isn't Burnout Revenge compatible with Xbox One now? No, that's not the one you're talking about, but do you have any interest outside of gaming? Of course. I really like the NBA. I like traveling. I like movies a lot. I went through film school. I mean, that was my first love. I am a connoisseur of strange foods. And what I mean by that is like I told you guys earlier who were watching about like, oh, I part of the reason I'm in Guam, I'm like excited is like, oh, the food. I want to try like the the local style of food. And there's like the Chamorro burger, for example, is amazing. I like, and Scott, the Canadian, can attest to this. I like finding random variants of American things you don't find normally. So, like for example, this is a small example, but like Japan, you go there and there's like different versions of Kit Kats you've never seen before. Like one's made with oatmeal. That's small potatoes. A whole bunch of shit like that. And so, for example, you guys will see it later this year, I'm sure. Scott, you'll love this. At some point, I'm going to go back up to Toronto, probably crash at Scott's place, whether he wants me there or not. And I'll do a live stream with him, with his will or without. And then over at Shane's house, Rerez. And while Scott sits there sad by himself, I will unpack a giant bag or box full of candies and stuff from around the world that I'm giving to Shane, so Scott can sit there and be sad that he's not getting any of that. I'm just kidding, Scott. I got a couple of things for you, but you're not the candy junkie that Shane is. Thing is, neither am I, despite what I look like. I really don't eat much junk food. I just respect it. I just find it fascinating. If that answers that question at all. Like, I'm like, oh shit, look, they made an Oreo that tastes like cherry cola, which is a thing right now, by the way. I'm just like, that's fascinating. I wouldn't eat it, but Shane would, so let me go see if I can find that for him. You know what I mean? Did you play a Dreamcast homebrew shmup Drill? That doesn't sound familiar. If it didn't get a full independent release, then no. Like the homebrew ones that people just release for free online, you can burn them. I don't support those. Nothing against them. I'm glad people care enough to make them, but it's like you got to draw the line somewhere. Scott, I did get you some stuff though, based on I know your food habits, the things you like the most. I didn't realize the first game could affect the second one. Oh, referring to Shenmue. Yes. There are. The thing is, we know now Yu Suzuki kind of had this grand vision to go up to Shenmue 7. And, I mean, we can only speculate exactly how involved that would be. But I've always felt, based on just a couple of interactions between Shenmue 1 and 2, that for all we know, actions you make in Shenmue 1 or 2 would affect the outcome of Shenmue 7. Like, small example here. In Shenmue 1, there is a moment when you're at the pier and Nozomi comes over with this other girl and they have a camera and they take two photos. You have a choice between a photo where Nozomi is like, has her head on your shoulder or has her head on your shoulder, and one where you guys are standing away from each other. One looking kind of like you're just friends and one looking like you're a couple. Then the game asks you which one you want. Whichever one you pick, that one transfers with you to the second game. And for all we know, by making that decision, eventually you're in a position where she is or is not actually your girlfriend in like Shenmue 5. I mean, who knows? There's a few moments like that throughout. Not to mention, of course, there's the small... People think all it is, oh yeah, your capsule toys come with you and those get stolen right away anyways, who cares? It's like, no, there's more to it than that. There's a lot more to it than that, including, like in Shenmue 1, if you go to the parking lot and you practice and you like, basically max out all his skills, when you transfer to Shenmue 2, all those same skills are maxed out. So when you get into fights, like he's just fucking crushing everybody. Like it actually makes a very serious impact on the game when you really know what to play. But that's always been kind of one of the weird things about Shenmue is you have to kind of know what it is already. It's a very hard thing to sell to people in that sense, especially because a lot of its best features are not very well known. That's the reason US Shenmue fans were so upset with Peter Moore. He canceled Shenmue 2 for us. It was going to be cool to transfer files. Yeah, that is definitely what he's best known for, is the guy who axed Shenmue 2 in North America for his own career. Cax, it sounds like you're leaving. So good night. He says, good stream, Adam. Glad I could donate to the best guy on YouTube. Thanks for that. I'll catch you on the next stream. Well, have a good one, dude. Did you play the games I sent you? David says. What games, dude? I don't mean to be a dick. I'm spacing on that one. When is the Dreamcast shmup Xenocider coming out? I played the demo already. It wasn't a shmup. It was like a run and gun, well, Space Harrier style. But from what I don't know what its release date is. I know it's coming at some point. Basic logic in Dreamcast indie community is it comes out when it comes out. You can't expect hard release dates with that community. You just can't. There's not enough resources. There's not enough money. It comes out when it comes out. My main diet consists mainly of coffee and various cultural dishes. Yes, Scott knows me to a T. That's why we go over there and I have coffee and Swiss Chalet like every day. Are you worried about Shenmue 3 won't live up to your expectations? It's funny that you're not the first person to ask that, and I have answered it already. But the short version is no, because I don't expect it to send me to the moon mentally. I expect it to be a competent sequel, and I'm pretty sure we'll get that. Scott's going to bed. Good night, Scott. Have I ever completed a Pokemon game? No. Pokemon's one of those things, like, I'm just glad I don't care about it. I'm sorry, I just don't. It's anime stuff, and even when I was a kid, when Pokemon was at, like, the height of its popularity, I really just never gave a shit. When is the Missouri Game Con so I can take it off? I don't remember offhand. Check them on Facebook. They've got the dates over there. I'm sorry, I just don't remember offhand. So I'm thinking about looking at the time, and I'm thinking I might get going here soon. So why don't we do some power round questions, and maybe we'll end this in like 10 minutes. So anybody else, if you want to super chat or PayPal or anything like that, that's up to you. That'll be first priority questions. If not, no problem, no worries. We'll just proceed onward. And thank you very much to those who have done it, by the way. Do I prefer medium roast or dark roast? I like both just fine. I don't think I really have a preference. If you saw Peter Moore at a game conference or press conference or anything like that, what would you say to him? I probably wouldn't really say much to him. Like, this isn't a situation where I'm going, like, you ruined it for me. Like, I'm not a child about it. Like, it's some shit he did that I disagree with on a professional sense. I think it wasn't professional in his case. But like, I don't know the man personally. For all I know, he goes around and, you know, rescues puppies all day. He could be a wonderful human being, but that one particular action I thought was awful. So, but you know, I would not really probably want to engage much in a discussion with him. I would want to know if there's more to that story that is not public. Like, was it as simple as it sounds? Because most things are not. Most things are more complex. So I would want to, if for some reason I was forced to engage in this discussion, I would probably just want to hear his side of it and see what other information he has. But if it really is what it always seems like it is, then yeah, I mean, that was a dick move, and that's what that was. Coke or Pepsi, depends on the versions. Real sugar versions of both, I'll take Coke. High fructose corn syrup American bullshit versions, I'll take Pepsi. Do you know why the SNES Junior or Famicom Junior never got a PAL release? I didn't even know it didn't get a PAL release, so I don't know. It probably, if I had to guess, and obviously it's just a guess, is that it didn't sell particularly well in North America or Japan. I've seen a couple of them in the States. I've seen a couple of them in Japan. They just don't pop up very much because they were really only around for like a year, half a year, or something like that. And Europe tends to get screwed on stuff like that. So my guess is by the time they would have been ready for it, they had already made the decision they weren't going to do it. How do I like my steaks cooked? Medium rare. Favorite city in Wisconsin? Probably Milwaukee. I don't. I go to Wisconsin a lot, but to be honest with you, it's always for work related purposes, and I can never wait to leave. Um, I do not like Madison, Wisconsin. I really don't like that city, and I have to spend a lot of time there. We got a donation from Kyle Davis. Oh, he says, "Yo, you're still live." Anyway, I apologize for the earlier message. I typed it very quickly on my phone. So for my question, since we're about halfway in this year, is there a gaming called potential game of the year yet? I can only say that based on it would only be fair to say that based on ones I've played excessively, and unfortunately, that hasn't been that many. So I would probably at the moment give it to Far Cry 5, though I'm sure many people will wildly dispute that claim. But that's at the moment the only one that would even be remotely fair of me to give that to. So if I have more time later to play more of them, sure. But unfortunately, a lot of them have been kind of like bite sized in the amount of time I've been able to play them, which sad day for me. But I guess that would be the answer. Thank you, Kyle. PayPal link is in the description. It's just the email address attached. Thank you very much, Kyle. Got another donation from a David Rabatali, who just says, "Sorry for such a small amount." He gave me 17 cents, which is fine. And he said, "I'll comment if I think of a question." All right, well, thanks, dude. Yeah, like I said, you guys can donate whatever amount you want. Like typically, less than $1 and for a question is not really ideal, but like I'm not an asshole. If you paid, I'll answer your question. Just don't do like 1 penny interactions. Like those are just kind of a like I remember doing this one show and this guy had a whole bunch of questions and he kept just doing 1 cent. And I was like, that's nice that you're doing it, but like you're taking away all that time from other people because you're kind of exploiting, you know what I mean? So that's kind of why I like to keep it like a $1 thing, but that's more of a gentleman's agreement than anything else. But like, you guys do what you want. St. Louis food/drinks you're looking forward to getting again when you're here for the Missouri Game Con. The thing is, St. Louis, like, I mean, I've been there the last 2 years in a row. Toasted ravioli is kind of the thing, but to be honest, it's just like whatever's available. There's not really, no offense, St. Louis isn't known for much food wise other than toasted ravioli. I know you guys make a big claim to the ribs thing. I would be down for trying like whatever Missouri can throw at me with like the best ribs in Missouri type of thing. But other than that, I've got no special ideas for that. Will I do a tour of my game collection for 100,000 when I get 100,000 subscribers? Hell fucking no. The game room tour is obviously the most demanded video request I get, and it's like it is such a horrible fucking idea to do that. Like it's just so bad. Like obviously all of you want to see that, right? Yet if I did that right now, it would be pointless because I'm not actually done collecting anything. So it would be horribly out of date. And then at the same time, you've kind of got nowhere to go because I'm like, later I'm like, hey guys, you want to see this thing? It's like, now we saw it in that other video. Fuck off, unsub. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a kiss of death for a lot of retro gaming channels. And I've seen it because I've been around for a long time doing retro gaming stuff. I've seen a lot of channels where they just, they're doing okay, then they do that, and then boom, it's over. Or there's other channels where that's where they start, and after that, they don't know where the fuck to go. You can't go anywhere from that point. So it's a really, really fucking bad idea. So what I've always said about that is, if you ever see a day where I post a video that says my complete game collection, celebrate that day for that video, but mourn me the next day because I'm not coming back. That's essentially what that would mean. Oh, the Sly collection. Yes, David, I do remember that. No, man, I haven't had time to play it. I'm really sorry. I could see it. It's right over there. But unfortunately, I have not. Not had time to play it, man. I'm never here, dude. I don't know if you missed the earlier part of this. Like the last 3 weeks alone, I was in Japan. I was in Guam. I was in Saipan. I was in Hawaii. Briefly in Texas and Little Rock. Now back in Chicago. I'm going to a few other places in the next few weeks that I'm not sure I'm allowed to say, so I'm not going to say them just yet. But then, like, previous right before I came to Japan, I was in Japan again, and then Japan again, and then in Australia. Like I'm never here. So the amount, that's what I was saying about like with Far Cry 5 is like the amount of time I actually have to sit down and play like a game extensively is unfortunately very rare. Though I do a lot more of that with the Switch, but nothing on the Switch this year anyway has really pushed me the same way Far Cry 5 has as far as my like, okay, let me get back to playing it, which is unfortunate because I can't play the Far Cry 5 on my Switch. Kiss of Death. Metal Jesus has done them, and he has over 500,000 subscribers. Yeah, and then he's a unique exception. Jason's a good dude, but like, I just don't agree with that mentality because I feel like if you're still collecting stuff, then your video is inherently out of date right away, and I just don't like that. So that's one part like basic philosophy, another part personal preference. But you are citing one of the very few exceptions. He is the exception, not the rule. The vast majority of people who do that, that's it. It's over. Do I hate the Amiga CD32? Why would I hate it? I own one. It's great. I love it. It's such a weird thing. What the fuck is Saipan? Saipan is the biggest city of the Northern Mariana Islands, which is one of the 5 American populated territories. It's right around Guam in the Pacific. Callan McLean super chats. He says, what are your thoughts on the upcoming Spyro remaster and remastered games from that era in general? I like that they're, first of all, thank you for the super chat. Second of all, I like that they're doing that. I like that a new generation gets to play those. I actually have very mixed feelings on the way they're doing it. Because I guess I like that they're remaking those games from the ground up, because then it's like you're making them more modern in a sense. But to be honest, I think I'd rather just have like quote unquote HD versions of the PlayStation games if I wanted that, because you're probably not going to make a ground up remake that's exactly the same experience. What they're trying to do is essentially give you the nostalgia you remember, and the way you're going to remember it is going to be much better looking visually than it actually was. And they're trying to appeal to that. And I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to be bad. I'm just saying personal preference. Personally, if it was up to me, kind of do both. But then again, I say that with no understanding of how much money they're willing to dump into it or what they expect it to sell. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Just don't call it complete yet. No, dude, I'm not doing it. It's absolutely never going to happen unless it's the last day. I mean, if you're talking about the video, like, oh, my complete collection, I'm not doing that video. That's not happening unless that's the last day of my channel. Just because, like I said before, you blow your load, it's over at that point. I don't want to do it. And I just, like, Pete Dorr did that once where he did like an entire tour of his video, and ever since he's just kind of really, he just does like live streams and stuff, and he's not at the same level that he was, and that's not knocking him. It's just maybe that's just partially his life too. But like other people you've never heard of that were used to be a lot bigger who have done that and just vanish after they do it. I don't want to do that. And nothing you're going to say, sorry guys, is going to convince me otherwise. Like that is not changing. That only happens when it's the end. The only exception in there would be if I completed a set of something and I wanted you guys to see it, like the Dreamcast set. And I think technically I've shown you the Atari Jaguar CD set, but like the whole, like, here's my whole room with all my shit, like the last video ever. Plus, think about it this way. What a good way to go out. That's going out with a bang right there. But don't worry, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. At least I don't think so. We got a donation. This is from Sinking Orange, who says, this is a request for an OG Xbox controller cleaning video. I've got a gummy translucent one. I'd like to clean it up, and I just enjoy cleaning your cleaning guides in general. Well, thank you for the donation. I can't promise that I would do that anytime soon. But at the same time, like, I actually don't have a dirty controller for that. Though I do appreciate the the way you did that. So I guess I can't say no, because it's certainly something I would be open to doing. But yeah, I can't say I have any plans to do it immediately either, because I just don't have a dirty controller or, frankly, the time. If I had both, then yes, I would absolutely do that. So we've gone overtime on our plan here. Adam always ignores me during these live streams. Do the Stitch impression. Fuck everything else. I already did it. I did the Stitch and the Mickey. They both happened. Mickey got some serious screen time. He became Thanos and everything. So what we're going to do here at this point is we're going to go out with a bang, as I like to always end it that way. Let's do one final question, some really good conversational thing we can do, and then we will head out. No, I'm not going to do a game room tour. We just talked about this for like 10 minutes. So apologize as I go kind of silent to scope one out. Do the Bubbles impression. What the fuck is that? Castlevania game says, "Great stream, Adam. Have a nice evening." You leaving already? I'm not done, man. We're almost done. Ivana says, "I do a shitty Kermit. I do a good Miss Piggy. Thank you." Kyrick, this won't count. Kyrick super chats. Says, "You keep a list of your games, and is it a good idea?" Of course. Oh yes, I definitely keep a list of games that I own, and I also sometimes, depending on the platform, keep a list of the games I'm looking for. Especially when I go to like Japan or something, I like make a list like, okay, here's all the N64 games I'm looking for, so I don't fuck up and buy games I have. You know what I mean? So I do that, but I also have a list of all the games I own. Just they're organized based on platform. Thank you very much for the super chat. And I do recommend it if you intend to collect games for the purpose of having, a nice set. I know some people, this is weird, but some people actually collect by just buying stuff in mass and they don't really care what they get. That's a little different than the way I do it. This won't count either, but can you at least show your current setup? The way I set my consoles up, that I'm totally open to doing. That's just a matter of time. Like, I literally have to have the time to produce the video. All right, I think I'm going to go out with this one because it's very, I think, kind of thought-provoking. Because I'm sure a lot of people on the surface will think it's funny, but if you really think about it, maybe it's not. Could the Atari Jaguar have won if Sony didn't bother? Obviously the most of us laugh like, PlayStation was just preordained to be successful. It's like, well, obviously the hypothetical is that Sony didn't get involved. So what happens if that's the case? Does Atari succeed? I gotta say no to that part. They were separated by 2 years of release time, and the Jaguar didn't exactly kill it in those 2 years. So I don't think the Jaguar could have won, but the alternate version of history without Sony's presence, I gotta say, was probably the Sega Saturn's future. The Sega Saturn probably would have killed it. And the reason I think that is that we know what happened with Nintendo regardless. Nintendo went with cartridges and they pissed off all the developers. What happened with Sega's side of things was, frankly, their system was just too hard to work with. And so developers didn't want that, but they weren't really bitter at Sega so much at that point. They would eventually be, but at that point they weren't. So it's very possible that they would have been like, look, your hardware is annoying to work with, but cartridges are just too fucking expensive. You guys are using discs, that will do. That's what we will do. That's essentially what did actually happen in Japan. Even though the PlayStation still killed the Saturn in Japan, I mean that metaphorically. Well, obviously it's not literal, it's not alive to begin with, but the Saturn did extremely well in Japan. The Saturn actually vastly outperformed the N64 over there. What I'm suggesting is that without the PlayStation around, that microcosm of the Saturn versus the N64, where in Japan it played out to be vastly more successful, I think that probably would have happened in North America and Europe if there was no PlayStation. Especially because Final Fantasy was one of the big things, Final Fantasy VII in particular, was one of the big things that pushed PlayStation into the next realm of like, oh, we're serious. We know already Square was going to make that for the N64, but then didn't want to work with cartridges, and they left them. They probably would have gone with Sega, but they didn't for that reason. And so I'm thinking, yeah, that's probably what it would have happened. Is that the Saturn would have been the big winner. You probably would have never got a Dreamcast. You would have got something different. Saturn probably would have lasted a lot longer. But yeah, that's how I think it would have played out. But hey, I base that on a couple of random examples of history. That's how I get to that conclusion. But obviously, I don't know for sure. I don't have that timeline. So anyway, I guess that will do it, guys. I want to thank you very much for watching the show tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you for everybody who donated and all the super chats and PayPal donations. Always awesome. Very nice of you guys to do that. I hope you had a fun time, and I guess I will see you all later. As always, I'll see. Oh, my podcast comes out next week, so you can watch that. I'll have Playload as usual, and then obviously more content coming up, including more pickups videos and all that kind of stuff. More stuff's coming, and see you guys later.